Good evening, everybody. Hello and welcome to League of Europe Endure, round two of this inaugural season of 100% races for you. We're at China this evening, the Shanghai International Circuit, and I'm not Ivor Bryn Mike. You may have noticed from the lack of Welsh in my voice, but I am joined, as previously, by XLRJ. How are you doing, my man?
Doing very well, thank you. Can't wait for another 2 hours of my life commentating this. But it's very compared to normal league races. It is very intriguing the whole way through. So yeah, can't wait yet again for this.
Well, it's a very different kettle of fish, as you say, and for once we're not expecting, I think, a one-stop race this evening, which we'll come on to. But if Bahrain's anything to go by, we're in for an absolute treat this evening. Bahrain was a wonderful race. And speaking of, we will dive right into the standings and have a look how last race ended 3 weeks ago. Luke 05 HT, he's top of the championship with 117 points. And you may recall that drivers get 60 points for winning the race, plus a point for every lap that they complete. So 117 were on offer at Bahrain, 116 today with a 56 lap race. Second place in the championship is Larkin. He's not racing this evening. He's on 109. DTR Brent in third on 103. NL Energetics also not racing this evening. He's in fourth on 97 points. Then Waluigi on 92. Myself on 87. I chickened out of racing for the sake of commentary because this is a terrible circuit. XL Dillon is on 83. We've got Rocco on 79. Verstappen on 75. Montana on 71. Campbell 69. Nolan 67. Justas 65. Marty 64. Rick 63. Carmental 62. Ibo 60. There are finishers from Bahrain, and then Passe on 29, Farrell Fury on 26, and Old School, who managed just 7 laps at Bahrain with as many points to his name. And you'll notice that there's quite a fair spread of names there from D1 to D5 in terms of the order. It's nice and mixed up. Realistic performance, of course, which brings us nicely onto the grid this evening, because it's not static between races. It's not a fixed grid for the season. We're going to see drivers move teams according to their performance level, because we are on realistic cars. So in the Red Bull, we've got Sir Ibo and ERS Major this evening. CPI Noah J and IRT Marty and Mercedes. I'll tell you now, Marty is my favourite for the win this evening. He's in cracking form in Division 4, and he had a really nice race in Bahrain until it all went a little bit pear-shaped for him. In the McLaren is Farrell Fury and Passe, both driving for Ariel. Same again at Aston Martin. It's Calvin and Car Mentalist. Waluigi and Brent in the Ferrari. We've got Old School and Ariel Nolan in the Alpine. Luke 05, our championship leader, AlphaTauri with Rickerick, both from D3 there. And then we come to the D1 guys. Dylan and Rocco, both representing XL in the Alfa Romeo. Montana and Verstappen in Haas. Campbell and Justas in the Williams. Justas and Verstappen have swapped places from Bahrain. But I think it's safe to say that Montana and will be staying in that Haas all season long. So that's timed very well. We've come into qualifying now, and I'll be very upfront, RJ. I have no idea who's going to get pole here. Well, it's going to be Marty, but after that, I have no idea where anyone's going to qualify. What about you?
Yeah, I don't want to make predictions because last time I made a prediction in this in Endure, it went horribly wrong. So I'm just going to stay away from that.
Please do embarrass yourself. I'm more than happy for you to. I'll happily embarrass myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I do also think that Marty should be up there. He was doing quite well last race, and yeah, he's on a good run of form in Division 4, so he's got a real good shot.
Well, it's been a minute into the session. We're only now getting our first car out on track, which is QVR Campbell, so no one's in any particular rush. Although we should say, shouldn't we, that with it being 100% race and it being a two-stopper, you have less tyres to play with. These guys might be less inclined to use 3 sets of softs in qualifying here compared to what they would be in a standard Saturday night League of Europe race. But we'll see how the session evolves. They're all coming out now. I think most people will be going for the softs, and indeed everyone out so far is on the soft tyres. Well, what are your thoughts on this track, RJ? It's a bit of a Marmite one. I think it tends to be very popular with the pad drivers, with the exception of my good self, and not so much favoured by the wheel users. How do you rate China?
Yeah, I think this is exactly it, really. Most people on a controller do absolutely love this track, and I might be the exception with wheel drivers. I don't mind it, but I can see why people wouldn't like it on a wheel. Just a lot of medium speed, feathering the throttle kind of corners, especially in that middle sector, but it does tend to make for some decent racing, especially with the two fairly long straights. So yeah, it should be a good one actually. Especially for 100%, it will be very interesting, and I think strategy. Yeah, as you said, 2 stops more likely around here, so the strategy should be even more interesting around here.
Well, you mentioned it's a tricky one. I think we're going to see a lot of spins and a lot of shenanigans in qualifying and in the race. I wouldn't dare expect 20 drivers to make it to the end of this one. I think we were lucky that we got 17 to finish in Bahrain. I think that total is going to be lower today. So we're on board with QVR Campbell, first man who's going to complete a lap, who's through the kink of turn 5. There's a Ferrari, that's DTR Brent getting out of his way. Very distracting though, as Yuki Tsunoda proved at Mexico, when you've got a driver darting off track in your eye line. But he picked up turn 6 nicely and now throwing it into 7. He's having to downshift into 6. I doubt he'd have to do that in an equal performance. And then he gets on the curb, little squirm there from the Williams. It didn't like that, and he's back straight off this lap, has QVR Campbell. But just behind him, we've got Waluigi, who's on lap, and I don't think he's having the same troubles in the Ferrari. Nicely done there as he comes towards the end of the second sector through that double left-hander. He's going to have his teammate, I think, ready to give him some slipstream, or perhaps that's just a courtesy, but nicely done through 12, and then the never-ending turn 13. You're just never quite sure when you can fully squeeze the throttle and go at it with 100% application, and I don't think Brent is giving him any kind of slipstream. That's a shame for Waluigi. He might have been hoping with the position he's in that he could have got a bit of a toe there, but trickiest breaker zone on the circuit now, turn 14. Let's see. He picks that apex up nicely, runs a little bit wide on the exit. He has to pull that back before he can get on the throttle. Ease the car to the right-hand side, just throw it into the last corner. Don't touch that yellow curb because it will unsettle the car, just as Waluigi has demonstrated nicely, but he avoids an invalidation. It's a 32.5, and I think we'll be expecting pole to be somewhere around a low 32, a high 31. But what do you make of that first effort from Waluigi? How do you think the times are going to evolve? I'm asking you, but I don't think either of us really have a reasonable idea, do we? Rocco pops in second with a 32.6.
No, it's so difficult to tell because the guys in the top divisions tend to well the guys in the top division have been put in the slowest cars, so it's difficult to tell. Completely different to what normally would happen around here in a Bob standard league race, but Marty's put in a 31.5. I think Waluigi's lap in the Ferrari is quite good considering the Ferrari's lack of straight line speed. And talking about toe, I think the toe would have been very useful, especially for the Ferrari engine cars. But I think that's a decent lap so far, but it has been absolutely demolished by Marty and the Mercedes.
Right, so Mercedes 1-2 right now, and you mentioned that it's very hard to predict any which way this is going to go. We've got Mercedes, that is Marty, he's just backing off. I wasn't sure if he'd spun on the exit of turn 6. But yeah, Marty's on pole on a 31.5. I initially said that we might see pole as a high 31. Marty has blown that out of the water instantly with this 31.5. We've got a lot of competitive times on the board already. NSX Montana down there and Verstappen very finely poised in the Hasses. 33.1s for both of them. Now both outside the top 10 as Campbell does now set a competitive lap at 32.9. We've got a really big spread right now. Let's have a look at the intervals there. Marty's on pole by 0.7 of a second right now. And then Noah has a further 0.2 of a second all to himself, back to Calvin. Dylan, who's doing very nice. None of those D1 guys, with the exception of Larkin, actually got into the top 10 at Bahrain. So it'll be interesting to see if we can see a change there in qualifying. Waluigi just 1,000th behind Dylan. Then Nolan, Rocco, Old School, all very close along with those guys up ahead. And then a bit of a gap to Campbell, car mentalist Montana, Verstappen, and Rick. And then we're seeing the bottom 7 yet to set a competitive time. Luke, 2.7 seconds off the pace for our championship leader so far. That's not too good. Unless we've sort of hinted at strategy, unless he's going for some kind of... he's aiming to start on the mediums, which wouldn't surprise me if we're looking for a 2-stop. He might try and stretch that into a 1 with a medium hard or some such. But we have no idea, do we? I've heard that soft medium is impossible. I've heard that soft hard is not very nice. So you can only think that he's going for medium hard if that was a deliberate lap time.
Yeah, and obviously we know on this game that the hards really aren't the type you ever want to touch on this game. Just never seem to get in the right window temperature-wise, and then they're just horrible to drive, even if you do get them into that window. But with 100% race, I think it might be the better of two evils in a way. You don't want to sort of soft mediums, just the tyres are going to go. You'll have to do a 2-stop, so it's whether people want to push and do that 2-stop, or they think just they'll lose too much time doing that second stop, and they'll have to use the hards. It is just really intriguing to see what people are going to do.
Well, there's another unseen factor in that, which is of course safety cars, because it is, as you say, very marginal between a 1-stop and a 2-stop if you want to use the hards or not. But Bahrain had a hell of a lot of safety cars, more than I was expecting. A couple of them saved my bacon at times. And that's another factor that people are going to have to juggle. Like, what's the likelihood of safety car? I said this is a very tricky track. I think we could see a lot of spins, a lot of bottles, a lot of crashes here. And if they bring out safety cars, that's going to wreak havoc with people's strategy. Passe crosses the line, 32.5 for him, drops in between Calvin and Dylan as people are now winding up for their second laps. But do you think we're going to see some safety cars today? Do you think that's on the radar?
I can see one on lap 1, definitely, because that first corner can be so difficult, especially depending on how people start. You can be in there 3 wide, and that's never going to end well. So I can see one coming out somewhere between turns 1 and 4. Well, for an incident between turn 1 and 4, and after that, I'm not sure. It probably, if the safety car's going to come out after that, it will be for an incident in the middle sector or before. But I'm not sure about the safety cars. I think we might just get away with probably 2. So
I think you're being very optimistic there. I agree with you. I think if we're going to see a safety car after lap 1, it'll be the middle sector. There's a big chance here of individual errors. I think that's where a lot of our spins and our incidents are going to come from. Isolated incidents of drivers making mistakes. I commentated a pre-season race here for D4, as it was at the time, and only 4 cars complete the race without spinning. Obviously, people are more up to speed on the game now, far more so than they were then. We're not expecting it to be that bad. But I think certainly with people driving cars at performance levels they're not used to, there's a real chance that people could make more mistakes than they would otherwise. We're on board with Waluigi right now. He's a 10th of a second, nearly 10th and a half up through the middle sector. Nicely done through turn 13 again. Of course, we were on board with him for his first lap. He's going to be the first man to complete his second lap time of the day. And he can have a nice little breather now down the long back straight, one of the longest straights in Formula One. I think it was the longest when it was constructed. And now towards turn 14, I think he picks a nicer apex. He doesn't have to correct as much on exits he did the first time, and he could have extended a little bit more there. And he made a little mistake at the last corner as well last time. Doesn't make the same mistake this time. A much tidier final sector for Waluigi. And he goes on a 32.0. Still can't break within half a second of Marty. But that is a much better second lap from Waluigi there.
Yeah, very good. And to be that close to the Mercedes really is quite impressive. With the Ferrari's straight line speed. I want to check sector times. He is only 2 tenths down in that final sector, and that is just a straight, really. So that is a very, very good lap time from the Waluigi.
Definitely is, and with on sector times, I think with the engine differentials between the cars now, the straight line speed differentials, I think we're going to see people being much more aggressive with the way they're using their aero. They're using their front and rear wings because you don't want, as Luke pops into 7th place, he does set a competitive lap time, 200s faster than Nolan. If people don't want don't want to minimise the risk associated with having really high wings, so that I think we'll see some people running much more aggressively with their setups than they would in LOE normally. As Calvin backs off his lap there.
Yeah, and especially with cars like the Ferrari, it's a pretty decent car, chassis and aero-wise, but it is just that straight line speed that really lets it down. So they are, for both anyone in the Ferrari engine cars, really going to have to back off on the levels of downforce. Whereas if you're in, let's say, the Red Bull or the Mercedes, you're going to pile on the aero because you have that straight line speed, and it's just a benefit there already. And some of the cars with Mercedes engines, like Calvin, he just lost the back end through turn 4. They have very good engines, but not so good chassis or aeros, so the high levels of downforce are going to really benefit them, and it kind of evens it out at some point.
Yeah, I think unless you're in the Mercedes, there's a big trade-off between running your aero high or having better straight line speed, because the Ferrari particularly, we just said with Waluigi, you don't want to run you don't want to have to run any higher wings than you need to because of how poor that Ferrari unit is in a straight line. That Ferrari donkey, as Martin Brundle would say. Just flicking through the grid, no one is in any way inclined to really set quick laps on these second runs. I went through everyone. Everyone seemed to be backing off, unless I've had an absolute mare and missed something. We've got Calvin on a lap now. I don't think he's going to get any straight, and yeah, he backs off. So I think everyone is just now playing a waiting game for their last laps. We've got 4 minutes to go in the session. Everyone's now coming into the pits. We've got a couple who are out of phase. The 2 Alpines of Nolan and Old School are on out laps, as is Ariel Passe, who's now going to be the first one, I think, to start his final run. He'll have a chance to get multiple laps in, but this will be his first lap of his final run. But you don't want to do multiple laps. The softs are not a nice tyre. They're not a nice tyre 50%. They're not going to be a nice tyre in a 100% race. And they're certainly not going to be any good if you want to do a one-stop. You don't want to be doing more laps on them than you need to. ERS Major does set a lap. He pops into 6th place, squeezing between Passe and Dillon. And it's quite crowded there. 9/10 off pole. Calvin, Passe, Major, and Dillon all within 700ths of a second of each other. Although Passe is improving right now. He's one of the only man on a lap with Old School at the moment. Nolan is about to join them. Nicely done through the middle sector from Passe. Let's see how he hooks up this double left-hander. Takes just the right amount of curve, feathers the throttle, doesn't run too wide on exit. That is beautifully done, nice and smooth from the Frenchman. He stays to the right-hand side, still only 300s up. We've got a yellow flag, people going slow in sector 1. I think that is Old School has thrown his lap on the exit of turn 4. We'll see if he's got any fuel, and he cuts turn 6 on the mini-map there. Very naughty from Old School. I saw what you just did. You should be reported for that. But here we go with Passe towards the last 2 corners. We saw with Waluigi early on how easy it is to bottle these 2 guys. You don't want to go too deep. You want to make sure you can get the car, turn in, straighten it nice and early. He does that. He does a very good job with hooking that up. Been a really great lap from Passe, and he doesn't finish it. Clearly he wants to do his lap at the end of the session. So I just wasted a solid 90 seconds of my life there. We'll jump to Nolan, who's in the middle sector, a 10th up on his personal best. And right now that would put him very close to Calvin. Look, from Calvin down to Rickerick, even to Verstappen, really not much in it from 14th up to 4th. So 11 drivers covered there. Nolan is improving again in the middle sector. Really nicely done through 12, coming towards 13. And, well, it's still looking like, isn't it, with 2 minutes to go, RJ, that no one is challenging Marty in this session.
Yeah, he's just in a league of his own at the moment. I am still surprised that no one's got ahead of Waluigi in the Ferrari. But the midfield is doing exactly what it does in real life, and it's just all ridiculously close. Even the Hasses aren't far off the back of this. As Nolan comes up towards the line, and Old School has retired in the pit lane, we're going to have Nolan go up to 3rd. So he couldn't get ahead of Waluigi, but the Alpine engine itself isn't very quick either. So that is a pretty decent lap time from Nolan to get him up to third.
Now, I was in the Alpine at Bahrain. It's not bad round the corners. You can afford to run quite low wings compared to some of the Ferrari-powered cars. It's not a bad car. Quite nifty around the corners, quite nimble. But it is not the best in a straight line. It's the only car, of course, on the grid with a Renault power unit. We're now looking at Luke 05 HD. He is our championship leader. He's in 10th place right now, and he's on course to improve fractionally as well. He's a tenth and a half up. Middle sector, we've got a yellow flag there. That's just one of the Williams is diving out of the way. But yeah, Luke is going to be the next man across the line. We've got Rick. Campbell is just doing nothing in the middle of the track there. Let's have a look further back. Who else is on lap? Car Mentalist as well. Just as hasn't been able to get firing in his Williams. We've not mentioned him all session. Farrell Fury is improving, but not by nearly enough. Marty's just starting his lap, and he's already invalidated at the last corner. Waluigi's on his final lap as well. Nolan's going again. He's 5,000s up, but we'll go back down to Luke 05 HD, coming around the last corner. Stay to the right-hand side for the shortest run. Cross the line at 32.1, and he beats Nolan by 400s, but still, no one is beating Waluigi here.
Yeah, that is a... Actually, that lap time is holding up very well. Very surprising that the Ferrari could be on the front row, but once again, the midfield is...
Oh, sorry. Nolan's round... not Nolan. Noah's round last corner. He completely dropped it on the exit there, and he's the first man to come a cropper of this Shanghai circuit, and he spins around. He's going to dribble across the line. 10 seconds off the pace. Sorry to cut across you there.
As Ibo crosses the line on his set of medium tyres, that was quite ambitious to get through on the mediums, but everyone's starting to finish their laps now.
Farrell Fury popped his way, popped his way into third. I think we've got the two Alphas who are going to be close to be the next across the line. I think they're both close to improving. Dylan was a little bit down on his PB. Marty's coming around the final corner. He's gone for another lap, I think. Doesn't improve. I think that's Waluigi now about to cross the line, and he doesn't improve either. So it's just the two Alfa Romeos and the Hasses, I think, that we've got to go. Noah's got a grid penalty. Dylan improves to 7th. That's a mega lap from the Curacao man. Rocco runs wide and invalidates the last corner. Too aggressive there. He does a 32.4, which would have done a really nice time for him. It would have put him up just below his teammate, but sadly not enough. Montana improves to 12th and Verstappen to 16th, but once again, no one, at the end of that qualifying session, nobody is, none of those D1 guys really managing to get anywhere near the sharp end of the grid. Dylan is the best placed in 8th, but Rocco, Montana, Verstappen, Just As Campbell, all outside the top 10 yet again, and as we predicted, it's Marty on pole by a country mile, half a second.
Yeah, I was on board with Noah Luigi, and he went slightly wide at the final corner. His lap time was within a tenth of pole position, so he wouldn't have gained the position on Marty, but he would have been a lot closer.
Hopefully that would be a good omen for him for the race. But just top of the grid, it's Marty, Waluigi, Farrell Fury, Luke, Nolan, Noah, Calvin, Dylan, Passe, and Major is the top 10, which is nice. It's nice to see, isn't it? This is the benefit of the lovely endurance format we have with Realistic Car Performance, that you get to see other guys fighting it out at the front of the field in the same lobby as Montana. And it will do Montana's ego no end of good, as you'll see from your screen. We've got a visitor for this race. It'll do Montana's ego no end of good to be down in 12th place fight with Ariel Nolan, because that's what's great about this format. It gives people some extra recognition, and it takes away from those who get far too much of it. But we have got heavy rain for this race. I did wonder why no one dared go on the mediums, apart from Ibo, in that qualifying session. And we now know it's because we have a wet race. And by the gods, I hope it's not a wet race for the entire race. I hope we dry up at some point. Otherwise, this is going to be a very interesting 1 hour 40 minutes that we have ahead of us. Formation underway. Everyone is going to be on the full wet tyres, but we'll go through the rest of the grid. It's Montana in 11th, Car Mentalist in 12th, Old School in 13th, Brickerick in 14th, Verstappen is 15th, Noah 16th after picking up those two 5-place grid penalties, which bumps everyone up a place from Calvin downwards, sorry. And Justas is 17th, Campbell is 18th, DTR Brent he's 19th. He's one from D3, I'll say. I expect him to make a steady climb through the field as the others around him start to suffer and fall. And Ibo is in last place. Cummins has been disqualified, meaning he's going to have some very cold, wet tyres on the grid there. But I'd love to know what the weather is. I hope someone's put it in the stream chat. Let's have a look. While I do that, what is your prediction? No one likes to answer this question, but what is your prediction for today's race? Give me a top 3. Give me some DNFers as well for Spice.
Here we go. Congratulations. If I predicted you to retire from this race, you're probably going to win. So I'm going to say Marty's going to win. And I actually fancy Noah Luigi to hold on to second, with Calvin third. I
think you, as a D3 person, I'd expect better from you, thinking that Calvin can do a full 56 laps without crashing. That's you're really putting your faith in him.
What I'm saying. Haven't thought about it. I've not jinxed him.
Well, perhaps. I agree with you. I think Marty and Waluigi for the front too. So we've got some proper weaving going on down the straight, and then we've got an Alfa Romeo. I think that was Rocco doing his best Kimi Räikkönen impression from over there, just driving straight while everyone else weaved like crazy. But this is nice. We don't have to talk about strategy. We can just say they're on the wet tyres. They're just going to run them for as long as they can and race like crazy until they have to pit. So everyone's on level footing. I wonder if anyone's running wet setups. You would think so with the wet race. People with 100% race might be more willing to sacrifice their qualifying because they've got more time to gain it back in the race. But everyone's coming onto the grid now. Marty's kept them nice and compressed down that back straight, so we won't have to wait too long. Not as long as Carmentelis has been. So we've got Marty on your right. We've got Waluigi on your left. You can barely see them through the spray. But the second round of Eloise and Jaw is about to get underway once we get those infamous red lights. And I have to say, I'm worried if we're going to see Marty run away and scamper here. There's the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth light. And we're underway, and I think Marty got a good start there, and you can see the car struggling away under traction. They're going to get so much wheel spin in second gear, third gear. Marty just about holds on, but he takes a very wide line through turn 1. Waluigi's not able to challenge him, so it's Marty who holds on from Waluigi, who's now looking into turn 2 and 3 as they drop down the hill, and Waluigi briefly ahead for a moment there by a nose cone, but Marty holds on. Now Farrell Fury's having a look at the Mercedes and the Ferrari as well, and actually Marty's made a big mistake out of turn 4. Waluigi surges into the lead, and now we've got Farrell Fury having a look around the inside of turn 6. That's very brave. And look at Nolan as well up the inside of Marty. Tragic start for the Mercedes man. Nolan has a little issue on traction there that might just about save Marty's bacon. We've got a Red Bull off in the background. That's CRS Major. But at the front, what a cracking first sector that was. We've got Nolan still hounding Marty. Luke and Dylan just behind them. We've got Montana upper place, wheel to wheel, with Passe in the midfield here. Lots of side-by-side action all the way down the field. Carmentelis going around the outside of Justas there. And Passe, and there's a Red Bull round. That's the RS Major. He's off track for the second time. Passe's off as well. He has to do a 360-degree turn. We've got a Williams squirming like crazy at the back of the field. I think that was QBR Campbell, not on Earth. No idea what on earth happened there. He's tussling with the Ferrari of Brent and Noah as well. Up front, Marty is still struggling to hold on to his place. We've got Rocco looking back from Marty there, running wide at turn 13. And I have to say, RJ, what a first lap this has been, as Luke is now going to go for it, I think, down the outside of turn 14 in the way. Who's the braver on the brakes here? And I think it's going to be Luco 5HD, our championship leader, drives clean around the outside of Marty. And our pole sitter, it has gone from bad to worse.
Yeah, Marty's just really struggling for traction. I don't know how warm those tyres would be going, the speed they went around the formation at, but he just squirmed out of turn 4 and completely, nearly dropped it. Lucky to still be in this race, but he is down to 5th place now as Luke has got past him. and I think Rocco won't be too far behind in the Alfa Romeo.
Rocco had a couple of moments on that first lap, as far as I could tell. It's hard to tell with all the spray, as you can see there on your screen right now. But we had Noah into the pits, but a few drivers, you can tell, look much more confident than others in these conditions, because of course they're driving in cars they're not particularly used to. And that's going to make the wet weather a whole lot harder to deal with. Old School had a look at Calvin there into turn 6, ended up finding himself nearly getting having a place stolen by Dylan. Montana's up a place into 10th. He's keeping a watching brief from these guys. But let's have a look at the positions change. Luke, the only man who currently sitting where he started. Waluigi, Farrell, Fury, Nolan all made gains. Marty, the big loser, along with those three guys at the back of the field, Major, Noah and Pate, who had very eventful first laps. Dylan's lost a couple of places as well. Big gains for just Aston Williams. I think we'll see that moving from qualifying to the race, that the D1 guys will start to flex their muscles a little bit and it'll come into their own and they'll start to shine in the wet weather conditions, because the skill gap in the wet is completely different to what it is in the dry. And speaking of people coming into their own, we've got Ariel Nolan here having a look at Farrell Fury down the down the back straight towards 14, because Waluigi is getting away from these guys, and Nolan, if he's going to make a move, he needs to make it soon. Farrell Fury defends fresh air, leaves a lovely space for Nolan to walk straight into, but the Irishman gets better traction and stays ahead for now. But Waluigi has a 1.3 second lead at the end of the second lap.
Yeah, and this is going to massively benefit him, it being the wet, because it kind of neutralises the straight line speed thing, and the corners become much more important as Nolan does dive it down the inside of turn 1. Bit of contact, but he looks like he's going to get this done if Farrell Fury can hold it round the outside. No, he's going to get squeezed a little bit out there, and Nolan goes up into P2. But with no Waluigi and Nolan to an extent, it's going to really help them with the corners being so much more important to lap time now with the wet conditions, as Montana has left the session.
Montana's disconnected. I wonder if he's had a rage-induced moment or if he's having some kind of connection issues. Rick just drives through his car there. It's a free position for him and for everyone further back. But let's have a look at where our close battles are. We've got Old School and Dylan in close proximity to Calvin, who's in the fight for P7, and then of course we've got that monstrous battle for P2 right now. Nolan instantly, as soon as Montana does get back in the session, as soon as Nolan was free of Farrell Fury, he was making big gains in the middle section. Farrell Fury running wide on the exit of turn 10, I believe that is, and he's already a second behind Nolan, and he's not even been behind him for a whole lap yet. So that shows you how much confidence Nolan has in these conditions. And I think thanks to Montana's rejoin there, we've lost the interval data on our timing tower. But you can see the situation. It's Farrell Fury, Luke and Marty who's really built up some confidence now in a battle for P3. Rocco can't get anywhere near this right now.
Yeah, that's just showing how...
Oh, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because, oh no, there was contact there between Calvin, Dylan and Old School. Calvin was sandwiched between the pair of them, and Dylan and Old School just pinched him in as they broke for turn 14, and that was nearly a horrific accident for all three involved. But Old School somehow came out of it on top, but 3 wide there into turn 14. Go on, RJ.
Yeah, it just shows the difference between the cars, really, as Marty is having a look at Luke now, trying to get back into people, trying to go all the way around the outside in turn 2, can't quite get the line. But yeah, with Rocco not getting close to these, it just shows the difference between cars. But Nolan on the last lap did the fastest lap of the race so far. He's starting to close that gap as Marty does have a look now into turn 6 and gets it stopped in time and gets back ahead of the championship leader. So Marty back up to 4th position now.
Clearly he just was lacking for confidence in that first lap. No real issues driving in the wet. He just didn't have the confidence. And you said about Nolan catching Waluigi, 6/10 per second is the gap now. And I think Nolan could be taking the lead of this race very soon if his guts fancy having a move into turn 14 or anywhere on track in the wet. It's harder to overtake, but I feel there's more places you're able to successfully pull it off. Now, everybody from Old School down to Brent is covered by, well, less than a second from the next car. So if we had DRS, this would be quite the train, but we don't for now. It's just Waluigi and Nolan out in front by 7/10 of a second. Farrell Fury really falling off from these guys. I think Marty's about to reclaim 3rd place. because the gap is nearly 2 seconds that they're falling away from this leading pair, and you can't afford to let them get away too far with no DRS in effect, with no real pit stop strategy to speak of in the wet weather. It's important that you don't let the other guys get too far ahead of you. And there goes Rickerick on Calvin, who's not having the best of times. He was in 7th early in the race. He's now down to 10th. Justas is making good progress. He's up to 11th. There's Campbell and Verstappen. I think we're trading places there at turn 14. There's all sorts going on in the midfield. Calvin now picks up a time penalty. But yeah, we've got, for a wet race, I have to say, RJ, we're getting some good battling out on track, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. And Rickerick made a very good move on Calvin down that straight, got the inside and got it done on the brakes. With these Williams and the Hasses are really going at it at the start of this race. The Williams isn't a bad car; it's quite a good car in the wet in real life, and they're holding their own in the race so far. So this is cracking in the mid pack, really good battles and at the front is some quite good battles as well. Nolan, the gap's kind of stabilised between the front two, but behind that, the three behind are going at quite a decent pace. So
yeah,
early laps of the race still, but it seems like quite a lot's happened already.
It's been a very frantic 5 laps, not even 5 laps actually. We've not finished lap 5, but yeah, it's been Farrell Fury. The gap between himself and Nolan has stabilised a bit, as it has between Nolan and Waluigi. So I wonder if Farrell Fury's just found a couple of tenths to keep him in there and to keep Marty at bay. That battle with Calvin, Justas, Campbell, Verstappen, Montana as well, the Williamses and the Hasses going at it, as you say, is from Calvin keeping a very close watch on Rickerick, who was bottling these guys up. But Calvin had a very poor turn 13, and I think Justas is going to edge past him here. It's the straight line drag between the Aston Martin and the Williams. And they're going to go side by side. And look, Campbell's trying to follow them through here. And they're really pushing each other, the two Williams, through there. They're going to try and make a double overtake on Calvin, who has a big mistake on traction. I think he didn't quite get the power down like he needed. And he has to back out of that one. He concedes to Campbell. And his downward spiral continues, Calvin. He had a very good first lap or so. He's now just lost another 2 places. He's about to lose a third to Verstappen. Because look at this. Here comes the Haas into turn 1. And with the inside line there, Calvin, I think, is going to have to concede. There is grip on the outside in the dry, in the wet. I think his Aston would just understeer like crazy. So the D1 guy's making good progress here. And you have to say, Montana probably not going to be too far behind.
Yeah, Montana's got a lot of work to make up after that disconnect. He was in the top 10, actually, I think, at the time, or 10 for 11. And he dropped all the way behind. Well, he dropped behind his teammate, both the Williams. So he was at the lead of this group. He's now at the back of it, but has the pace to be at the front of it. And in the wet, obviously, it's difficult to overtake. But if anyone can, Montana can.
And if anyone will, yeah. Montana will. He's not shy of an overtake as Montana, even if he is someone used to leading from the front. But you say he was at the lead of that group. He had a really strong first couple of laps, got his elbows out, made some good moves. That disconnect was very unfortunate for our D1 champ. And I'm just going to say, I think we might see a change for third place here, because Marty looks much closer to Farrell Fury off the back of 13, and he's already making gains of 0.2 of a second. And they'll both have their ERS in effect. It's slipstream only, because of course we don't have DRS in the wet. And here comes Marty, he pulls out. Is this going to be a textbook overtake? He doesn't have the overspeed he might like in towards turn 14. He brakes late. They break it out equal, actually. Farrell Fury leaves just enough space for Marty to get up the inside there. And I think the Mercedes, you can see how much they're both squirming away under traction. I thought Farrell Fury had that covered. He'd out-dragged the Mercedes, and then Marty came back at him around the last corner, but the inside line paid dividends for Farrell Fury. He holds on to third, but Marty 0.2 behind, and Luke just another 0.2 back as well. This gap, this battle, 0.5 per second between all of them, and they're all losing big time now to Nolan. 3.2 seconds behind the Alpine, and a further second behind the Ferraris. Farrell Fury has another moment through 3 into 4, but with the wet weather, you can see Marty squirming away there. There's no way for them to get the power down to try and capitalise on these mistakes. The wet weather is just neutralising everything right now, and if these guys aren't careful, they're going to start bringing Dylan, Old School, Rickerick and that D1 train into play, because they're now making progress towards these guys as the leaders start to battle. So Farrell, Fury and Marty and Luke can't afford to trip over each other too much here.
Well, Marty's only real opportunity is down that back straight into turn 14. I think he just needs to be a bit more confident on the brakes. He's still lacking that slightly, because he had the bit of the overspeed on Farrell Fury. He drifts wide of the apex there. Maybe a lock-up from Farrell Fury into that braking zone there, and Marty's sideways slightly as well. So, he's nearly round. He saved it. That is really good car control. But Luke's gonna have a look at him here. I was about to say on the last lap, going down the pit straight, they all had overtake on, and the Mercedes and McLaren just pulled so far away from Luke. Luke's going to have a look at the inside of the Mercedes. On the brakes, he's a bit more confident than Marty is, and he's going to get it stopped. Is he going to get this completed? Yes, he is. So Luke back up to 4th. This is exactly what Marty doesn't need. He looked to be going forward, and now he's lost a place again to Luke here on lap 8.
And Montana through on Calvin as well. And I think you could see, you're talking about the drifting through turn 13. The trouble for Marty is he was just too desperate there to get past Farrell Fury. He was trying too hard. If he'd just ridden that curve normally, he would have got the move done. He was very close to the back of the McLaren. But he was just too trigger happy on the throttle, and in the wet you can't afford to do that. And he had the same problem out of turn 14 that nearly gave a place to Rocco. And again, really struggling out of turn 4 there. And Rocco is now just a quarter of a second behind Marty. He was a couple of seconds off this battle. So Rocco really putting on a charge now. And that battle, as I said, it was going to cost people time. It is definitely costing them time now because Rocco, Old School, are right in this. Dylan's coming towards them as well. And I think Rick is starting to bridge that gap. We saw Montana has passed Calvin now. So Calvin down to 14th. It is really not going for him right now in the wet. But you can't look away from this Farrell Fury train. I mean, he's doing a tremendous job. He's the REL driver, but he's got Luke, Marty, Rocco immediately on his tail, and he's got Old School Dylan, who are about to join him. And a penalty for Marty. I have no idea how he managed to get that. He must have run wide on the exit of turn 10. And now look at Rocco going around the outside of 13 here. If the game will give us a nice camera angle, Rocco tucks into the slipstream of Marty, who runs a little wide out at 13. And I think Rocco's going to have the slip. But the trouble is, does this Alfa Romeo have the grunt in it? Does the Ferrari power unit have the straight line speed that Rocco's going to make any kind of move here? He's not. Luke pulls out ahead of Farrell Fury ahead. And that is the problem with realistic car performance. We've got a yellow flag. We've got a Red Bull round at the back. That's Ibo at the exit of turn 10. But that's the trouble with Rocco's much quicker than Marty. You can see his confidence through every single corner. But he's not got the straight line speed at the end of it to make a move where you're able to make a move, has he?
No, and actually I was watching Luke down that straight, and it's exactly the same thing. They just haven't got enough in a straight line to get anywhere near the Mercedes power cars. Probably they're gaining a tenth, maybe 2 down the straight, and it's just not enough to get alongside and try and overtake. And for all Farrell Fury struggled with traction, he's just holding the train behind him because they can't get close to him down the straights. And you talked about Rick getting close to this group. Lucas showed that AlphaTauri is clearly not around this track, as he's in 4th place, and if he just had a bit more straight line speed, he could be on the podium so far. So I expect all these drivers from 3rd downwards really to start bunching up together again.
Definitely. I think said about Farrell Fury, he's doing a great job. He's keeping his car on the right parts of the racetrack as ERS Major retires from the session. Have we got any kind of safety car or VSC? I don't think so. So that's going to help Farrell Fury out a treat. It's going to help Nolan and Waluigi out a treat because they keeps these guys really far behind them. But look at Farrell Fury. He is struggling now. I was going to say he's putting the power down at the right places at the right times when he needs to stay ahead. But he had a really difficult turn 12 and 13 there. But you said the AlphaTauri not as good in a straight line as the McLaren, and it's showing because the gap is staying at 0.2 per second. We've got Calvin's had a really big moment out of turn 13, and Luke nearly trying to force his way through, touching the rear wheel, tyre face to tyre face. Farrell Fury there, and it costs him out of turn 14 because he drops back to 0.7 per second. Marty couldn't capitalise, nor could Rocco. And further down, Verstappen has passed Justas, and this 4-car D1 train, as it were, is starting to spread out a little bit now. Montana's not really closing into these guys now they've all cleared Calvin. Justas and Verstappen trading places they've both dropped back from Campbell, and Campbell isn't making any kind of impression on Rick, is he? Who is still edging very slowly towards that leader group.
No, but you kind of expect that with the difference between the AlphaTauri and the Williams. The Williams is going to it's good in the wet, but still, this is the AlphaTauri. It's still probably a second a lap quicker. Rick doing a very decent job of closing up. It's going to be difficult because they're all, even though it's the wet, they've still got a toe off each other down the straights. So it's going to be difficult to close up. I was going to say, with Luke made a very ambitious step. I don't know if he actually meant to do it, but there was contact at that hairpin. And actually Marty went round the outside, but just was too eager again to try and get the move done, and was nearly out the race again. Just put the throttle down, and Rocco nearly got over his inside, and what could have been fourth place nearly turned into sixth place, and very lucky to actually get away with that. But they all are still in exactly the same positions as they were a lap ago.
Yeah, I think Marty needs to remember as Verstappen and Cam has passed Campbell. I think Campbell made a big mistake out of turn 13, and he's being let through by his teammate here. He must have had an illegal overtake on Campbell because he had to get right off the throttle. That's brought Montana right back into this 4-car train. And suddenly our D1 train is a train again. They're all within close proximity. But, I was about to say, Marty needs to remember that there's more points for finishing the race here than there are for anything else unless you're winning. So, which he's not right now. So the most important thing is that he gets to the end of the race. It's more important that he does the next 45 laps. There's another penalty for Calvin there. Than it is that he gets past Luke or Farrell Fury, because there's more points to be had by finishing the race first than there are by getting past the cars ahead of him second. And, we've got two really nice battles on track now. We've got one with Farrell Fury, we've got one with Campbell, and I'll tell you something we've missed. RJ's Nolan's made a big mistake. He's now 2.8 seconds behind Waluigi, and Farrell Fury has taken a second out of him. So hopefully he's not got damage, but a big mistake for Nolan has taken him right out of Waluigi's danger zone.
Yeah, and I think that the gap's still staying the same. So I don't think it's damage, but it was probably just a big mistake. I don't know. Turn 1 or turn 6 easily could be done in these conditions, but actually, Rick, we said he's slowly gaining. He's gained 4 attempts from somewhere, and he can pretty much on the back of this group now, which is the group with the battle for third place. Goes all the way down to Dylan, really, and Rick has joined the back of it, just outside of a second from the Alfa Romeo driver. So he has done a very good job to close that gap so quickly, actually.
It's this Luke's moment now to turn 14. He's going for it on the inside of Farrell Fury. Farrell Fury does not defend the inside line. He leaves it open. And we'll look for Marty, see if he gets in on the act. And again, he has a moment, Marty, that stops him from having any kind of impact on the cars ahead of him. Farrell Fury finally, his defence of third place comes to an end, and he made a mistake on the exit of the last corner, and that's brought Marty side by side with him into one. How brave is Marty going to be around the outside here? The car is just going to understeer like a boat in these wet conditions, and I think Farrell Fury's got this one covered unless Marty wants to send a lunge into the inside of 3. I would not recommend that, young man, but he doesn't. But Farrell Fury's, as I said, his defence of third place finally comes to an end, and in fact it's possibly his 4th place as well, because he had a big moment there on the exit of turn 4 towards 5. Straight is short enough that Marty couldn't do anything about it, and then the McLaren nearly sails straight into the back of Luke trying to defend into turn 6. That was a desperate moment from Farrell Fury. Luke was already scampered away by the thick end of a second, and you can see, looking back from Farrell Fury, just how close Rocco is in all of this. And in fact, is Rocco going for it here towards turn 9s and 10? No, he has to back out of it this time, but Rocco and Old School very, very close to Farrell Fury now. And you have to think, if Farrell Fury's lost one place and if his head's gone a little bit like that moment at turn 6, might that open the door for Marty, for Rocco, for Old School to follow swiftly through? Farrell Fury's lost one place, but he can't afford to let that turn into 4 places. And something has happened to Montana, because he's now a pit stop behind. And what have we seen? Marty's gone on the grass just as I turn away. Curse of the commentator there. Just like, go look what happened to Montana. Marty goes on the grass, and those places that he looked to gain on Farrell, Fury and Luke, he's lost instantly. But I think he's going to try and get one back because he's tucked right into Rick slipstream. Using all of his overtake there is Martin. He's going to go for it into turn 14. Rick sensibly leaves the space, but we'll see Marty's prone to having moments on traction, and again he has another one, a big moment. Nolan comes into the pits. He's, I think, our first scheduled stop. If that wasn't the case for Montana, Marty just about holds on. Farrell, Fury in as well. They're all coming in, so it must be time for intermediates, I think, because that rain has lightened up. And we'll see now, actually, if there's any kind of what the delta's like. I'll switch to time to leader. Sorry, Grosjean, and we'll see if those guys are quicker.
Yeah, I was just going to say, someone we haven't mentioned very well, I don't actually think we mentioned him at all so far in this race. Off School 3000 was right on the back of that group, right behind Rocco. He nearly slammed into the back of Rocco a lap ago at turn 6, but he's been just going about his business, not really getting involved in it, but he was right in that, about 5 tenths back from that group, and he's in a very good position now. If the wets hold on this lap and comes in at the end of the lap, he could well be involved, maybe jumping one of the drivers. He's just slowly gone about his business, just following the driver in front, not really getting involved in anything, and here we are on lap 13. He's in a very good position. I wouldn't rule him out of a podium at the end of this race. There's about 4 or 5 people really battling for that third position. He is definitely one of them as he goes a bit deep there into turn 11.
Well, Mark has 2 modes when he's in league race, and he has really super conservative mode where he doesn't get involved in anything, and he has street fight mode where hell blows out every lap, every corner, every lap. Seems to be in mode 1 today, but I don't think he's actually going to make any gains, because I'll tell you what, Nolan has taken 2 seconds out of Waluigi this lap, who comes into pits. Waluigi needs a perfect pit entry, and if Nolan hadn't made that mistake that we didn't see on stream, I think he'd be taking the lead of the race this lap, because he's gained over 2 seconds. We'll see how that changes as he comes round turn 14. Waluigi can't afford any slip-ups when he's coming into pit entry, and we're going to ride on board with Nolan. It's now over 2 seconds. Marty stays out. No idea why. He certainly can't be thinking of running these wets to dry, because he's going to lose every place that he had, and then some. And where is Nolan? He's going to be right on the back of Waluigi here, and has he got more confidence into turn 1? He's just half a second back, and you have to say, how costly was that error for Nolan, because he could have been 2-3 seconds in the lead now. Montana, fastest lap of the race. He did pit a lap early for Inters. That was why he fell back. But yeah, that mistake's so costly for Nolan. He'll be kicking himself that he's not in the net lead of this race right now.
Yeah, and good timing from the Waluigi. Basically, perfect pit stop. Just comes out ahead. So we have Noah out of the session at the final corner. And then we do have a safety car.
I'll tell you why Marty didn't pit.
It was all planned.
Oh, well, I'm not saying anything. I'm going to say something. Very suspicious that Marty is the only person who does not pit. A lap later, his teammate crashes and brings out a safety car. I'm not saying anything apart from that's very suspicious.
I'll say it.
I mean, if you're watching, if anyone's watching, let's have a look. We've got 11 viewers. Chat, was that deliberate from Noah? Let us know your thoughts, because I think that's very dodgy. But yeah, we've got Marty in the lead. He's going to get a free pit stop here. I think he'll come out between Nolan and Luke, possibly just ahead of Rocco if he loses any more time than that. Waluigi is second. He still does have the net lead of this race. Nolan's third, Luke is fourth, Farrell Fury's fifth, Rocco is sixth, Old School seventh, Dylan eighth, Campbell ninth, Montana is 10th, Rick is 11th, Verstappen is 12th, Carmental is 13th, Justas 14th. He has a penalty. We'll have a look at what that is. It's 3 seconds of penalties. Brent has 3 seconds. Calvin, horror show over him. He has 6 seconds. He's down to 16th. And then Ibo and Passe. Noah and Major have DNF, in case of Noah, under very suspicious circumstances, as Marty, shock of the day, comes into the pits for intermediates. I'd never expect that in a million years. Nolan goes through, Waluigi goes through. Where is he going to come out? I think he's going to come out actually further back than I thought he would. He's going to come out Is he going to come out ahead of Rocco? No, he's not. He had a big moment on exit again. Marty really struggling with structure today. He comes out in 6th place. Rocco is up to 5th, but has Rocco been told to let him go there? I think, yeah, Rocco was given an illegal overtake as Marty was out of the pits by the time he made the overtake. So Marty takes 5th place. He's got a penalty, of course. He got that up earlier today. And they're still trading places here. I'm wondering if they're a bit confused about who's meant to be ahead and who's not. Marty finally takes P5. We'll see if a penalty pops up in any time soon for a illegal overtake. But yeah, that brings the race together a treat, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I thought when Falco had to let him through the first time, it was maybe because he crossed the white line and technically was on track. I don't know, but I am very confused by that. But yeah, I did think Marty would come out a bit further up the field, but I guess because it's in the wet, the delta doesn't actually change that much compared to what they're doing normally. So, yeah, Marty in 5th place. It's a big chance for Marty to rectify the mistakes he was making before that pit stop. He was down in about 8th or 9th. Just really struggling with traction and showed it coming out the pits. But on the intermediates, should be a bit easier to find that grip on corner exit, and maybe he can start making his way through to the pace he showed in qualifying. He got pole by half a second. He clearly has the pace, but just needs to stop making some of the mistakes he has been and get back up there again.
Well, hopefully, for my sake, he does get on top of that. Well, no, I say that, and that was well timed because he went straight into the grass on the exit turn 14. Marty just can't calm his head down right now. He's making so many errors. Under the safety car, he nearly retired there. He went straight on the grass on the left-hand side on the exit of 14. I don't know if you saw that, but that was bizarre from the Mercedes man, and he just needs to settle down a little bit, stop making so many errors on traction. I know he's a D4 driver, but he's won a couple of races recently. I'll hold him to high standards because he's racing Rocco, Dylan, old school story drivers from LOE history. I mean, I don't know why I call it Rocco a story driver from LOE history. He's barely a footnote, but Marty's in a good position, even with his penalty. He needs to just settle down and not make some of these mistakes he's been making, because they're proving to be very, very costly. Unless, of course, you have a teammate who's willing to shoot themselves in the foot for you to make a free pit stop. Again, I'm not saying anything at all about what happened there, but only that it is, as the kids say, sus. Hopefully, safety car's in this lap, and we can get racing again. Do you think, because it wasn't the case at the start of this race, do you think Luke can stay with Nolan and Waluigi? Because it really was Farrell Fury that was the cork in the bottle for these guys, and when Luke got past, he did get away a little bit. Do you think Luke can stay with those two?
Yeah, if he has a good restart and manages to not lose a position again to Farrell Fury, yeah, I think he can definitely stay with them. His pace, once he got past, was pretty good, so yeah, he should be able to stick with them. But Nolan looked the quickest out of the three, but did make that little mistake, so we never know really. But Waluigi, his lap times were good, but Nolan just looked ever so slightly quicker. Whether that's enough to get him past, I don't know.
Well, we're about to see, because the safety car is in this lap, and Waluigi weaving away down the straight, pretending to look good. Because in the intermediate conditions, you don't need to weave. The tyres retain heat very easily. But he's doing it just to scare the guys behind, I think. But we'll go on board with Nolan for this restart. We'll see how brave he fancies being into turn 1. And Waluigi has gone on turn 15. And I'll tell you what, he's not just caught Nolan napping, he's caught Nolan in a deep slumber there. He was fully fast asleep, tucked into bed with a nighttime story, because he's a second behind by the time we get across the line. Waluigi leads on lap 17, but who was more asleep? Farrell Fury, 1.7 seconds behind Luke HD. The top three have done a runner here. It's Farrell Fury, Marty, Rocco, Old School, where the battle is right now. Marty's hounding hounding Farrell Fury round turn 3, round turn 4 now, towards the kink of 5, and Marty making another mistake on traction. Old School nearly making a bigger one, and that brings Dylan right into play. And look at Dylan now around the outside of turn 5. He pinches Old School up against that apex. Old School just leaves a car's width. He goes a little bit deep trying to defend, and Dylan cuts underneath him. He needs a clean exit. Not easy to come by clean exits today, but they're side by side through turn 7, and how brave are they each going to be? I think Old School's just got this done. Fabulous racing from the pair of them. Respect and quarter given. Old School holds on to 7th place. But that's just showing you how much people are struggling getting the power down in these cars that they are not at all used to, because there's so many mistakes on throttle. Campbell and Montana keeping a very close eye on these two, but we've had a tremendous field spread on this first lap. Nolan 1.3 seconds behind Waluigi, and Farrell Fury 1.4 behind Luke, who himself is now a second behind Nolan. None of the top 4 have managed to stay within a second of the car in front, which I think speaks to the nature of these wet conditions. It's very hard to follow.
Yeah, and Marty actually looks the only one in the top 5, top 6 that could even attempt to move down into the hairpin, but he's still a bit too far back. He's still having those issues with traction, but that was a bit better coming out of turn 14 there, as he goes a bit wide. I was going to say this is a very big opportunity for Waluigi to open up that gap again. This is exactly what he did. He did it successfully at the start of the race, build that gap before Nolan got through in second. But he just can't. He's built the second, but they're all about second between each other. So it's not the same gap that he built at the start of this race, and Nolan's going with him, and actually that gap is a bit smaller as we come through the first sector splits.
Yeah, it's just a second now. It was as high as 1.3. I want to say, even this early in the season, I think Waluigi is in a championship fight here, not least with the likes of Luke, I think, and who's going to be quick everywhere because he's sort of a bit of an everyman in an everyman car. That he'll just pop up at the top of the order because he's too quick, really, for the slower down cars, quickest cars, but he's too slow for the cars down the back. So he's always going to be there or thereabouts. Waluigi is in much the same position, so I think we could be seeing Waluigi and Luke already trading blows in a championship fight here. Waluigi's first race at Bahrain, he came in a very respectable P5. We've got a yellow flag there. That's Ibo, he's tried to go on the dry tyres. Fair play to that. Less respect for the fact he's picked the hards of all compounds that he could have chosen. But he's lost it at turn 6, and Ibo causing yellow flag. He'll be coming straight back into the pits. He shouldn't retire because there are points to be had for finishing this race. And now let's have a look at some of our battles further down. We've got Rickerick and Verstappen. Rickerick is still keeping company with those D4 guys, even now on the Inters, and Campbell, after that mistake he made earlier, is actually at the front of his train now, and he's very close to the back of Dylan, who is one of those who slipped quite considerably away from the cars around him. You said last lap how Nolan was doing a great job in the first sector to pull it back. He's lost 0.6 of a second since then, so maybe we shouldn't just hype anyone up in this race and just let them go at it, because clearly as soon as we hype anything up, the opposite is going to happen. 1.5 from Waluigi to Nolan, 1.6 from Nolan to Luke. Farrell Fury and Marty, as you say, the only ones really in a position to do any kind of place trading right now. Old School's close-ish to Rocco, though, and we've got Dylan is now at the front of that little D1 train, plus Rickerick, and we've got a Justas train as well. Justas isn't on the pace of any of the other D1 guys today, is he, RJ? He's not really keeping it there, and he's in much more of a fight with Brent and the Astons of Car Mentalist and Calvin than he is with the guys ahead of him. Perhaps he needed a better car. Perhaps he needed an Alpha today, and we might have better seen Rocco or Dylan in that Williams.
Yeah, he's just struggled. He did kind of stay with them in the first stint before the safety car, but on this restart, he's just fallen so far back already. We're only about 3 laps into this restart, and the gap's 3 seconds. So yeah, he's just slipping away, and Brent's all over the back of him in the Ferrari. But as Brent goes off track, actually, so he's struggling for traction and just behind Justas. But yeah, just can't. He can't keep pace with the Hasses in front of him at the moment.
He must be hoping for some kind of safety car or pit stop or some sort of weather change, just as, because it's not going for him with the way the track is right now. He's in 13th. Of course, these guys are getting a point for every lap they complete, remember, so 20 points or 19 points rather, on the board for all of these guys so far, with the exception of Noah J, in all this suspiciousness, and ERS Major, who is in last. And there's Car Mentalist on Brent, actually. You said Brent was having a look at Justas. Brent must have made some kind of mistake in Sector 3, because Car Mentalist and him are going toe-to-toe now. The two former D3 driver and a current D3 driver going at it, or a D3 driver and his commentator, I'm better off saying, going at it through turn 3 and 4, and Car Mentalist just holds on. He takes 14th place, but Brent, we'll see if he has a look back into turn 6. How brave is Ferrari feeling? Not brave enough, and sensibly so, because he's got Calvin very close behind in case there's any kind of mistakes going on. I think our closest battle on track right now, though, now Car Mentalist has got ahead, is that D1 train from Dylan down. We've got quite the little queue running amok with Dylan, Campbell, Montana, Rick, Verstappen. So I think that's where our fight is right now. Marty's still close to Feral Fury, but not able to make any kind of impression.
Yeah, McLaren's doing exactly what it did in the first stint. It's just doing a very good job of defending, and with the straight line speed, it's just, yeah. The corners basically become impossible to overtake, and as Rick makes a mistake coming out of turn 13, but the Haas has just got nothing in a straight line. Overtake on, he's not gaining anything, Verstappen. He goes a little bit to the middle of the track in the hairpin, but nothing doing, and Rick stays ahead. But that Haas is just so bad in the straight line. It's probably one of the worst engines and the draggiest car, so it's so difficult for Montana and Verstappen to make any progress in this race. But the fact they've done it is astounding, to be honest.
It's a miserable car, isn't it? I could use stronger words than that if we weren't broadcasting live, but not a nice car to drive at all for Montana, and he had to do it twice. He came through once on the first few laps, then disconnected, lost all that good work, and now he's doing it again. So credit to Montana, he's having a nice race, he's getting on well. Justas, though, now 3.5 seconds behind Verstappen. He's actually got a massive train with him now. Car Mentalist, Brent, Calvin, Passe are all actually getting bottled up behind Justas, who just doesn't seem to have any pace under him right now. And further ahead, we've got both AlphaTauris now, right in the middle of trains. Luke, 3 seconds behind Nolan, and it's very much. We said, I asked you, would Luke stay with these guys? It looked like he'd made a breakthrough on that first lap after the restart, and now he's just fallen back into the clutches of Feral Fury, fallen away from Nolan. And it's very much as you were, although I'll say, Nolan's not staying as close to Waluigi as I thought he would. It took him a long time to fall this far back at the start of the race. And then, of course, he had that mistake to compound that. But Waluigi has just driven off on the intermediate tyres much more easily than he did at the start.
Yeah, man, he's doing exactly what he needs to do. That Ferrari in the wet conditions is always going to be better than it is in the dry. But he was in the front row in the dry. He's definitely not slow today at all. And Nolan's doing a good job just to be near him, to be honest. 2 seconds, it's a decent gap, but it's not impossible to close up. So if this does go to dry at any point, who knows? The Alpine could well close back up. But that queue from third downwards, Luke, as you said, he hasn't really stayed. He hasn't stayed with them at all, and Feral Fury not really putting pressure on him, but not falling back from him either. So they're just in a weird state of limbo, this group, from third down to about 7th. They're just, no one's moving, they're all just staying about the same distance back from each other. And how long that can carry on, I don't know.
I think the whole race is in a state of limbo right now, because everyone's quite evenly spread. Even the people who are running fairly close, like Marty being in one of the quicker cars in a straight line, at least in the game, can't make any inroads on Feral Fury. Montana, Rickerick, Verstappen are all sitting close as well. Old School on the back of Rocco too. And of course we've got the Justas train further back for good measure, and none of them look in any way, shape, or form close to making any kind of overtake. The only overtake we've seen so far in this restart, I think, really, Ibo getting lapped by the bulk of the field, because after he went on to the hard tyres, he's now back on Inters. You'll be glad to know, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. But yeah, Nolan falling further back from Waluigi, and you've got to wonder that. I'm going to move this on now, and I'm going to talk about strategy, because the wet tyres can run forever. It feels like the Inters are not inclined the same way. They do fall off, they do wear, they do struggle. We've got Calvin and Passe trading places at turn 14, but yeah, the Inters do go off, they do burn out, and you do need to change them. You can't run super long stints on the Inters, and which begs the question of how this rain is going to evolve, and if it does dry up, and if it dries up anytime soon, drivers are going to have an interesting conundrum of, do they stay on old Inters and risk a puncture for the sake of going straight to dries, or do they come in for another set of Inters? I don't think we're going to have that problem for another 10 laps or so at least, until the Inters start to go away from them. But I think at this point in the race, where we're in a bit of a lull phase, it's worth pointing out that the Inters are not. There is going to be a pit stop phase with these intermediates. They're not going to go all the way to the end, and I have no idea how long they'll last. But I know they won't last the full 30, whatever it was, 40 odd laps that they're being used for. Waluigi's just gone purple in sector 2, by the way. But yeah, well, if we're in that situation, you're on the borderline where you're risking a puncture, but you could go straight to dries. Would you come in earlier and go into dry, or do you think that risk is a calculated risk and it's worth doing to try and go straight to dries, even if you're coming out at 90% wear?
It purely depends on it purely depends on when it is going to go dry in the end, really. You can stretch it, let's say another 20-30 minutes of this rain. You could stretch it. You're probably best to stretch it, but let's say there's another 50 minutes of the rain, you probably want to pit. So it purely depends on if and when it stops raining, how long the rain's for. If you get in to 60% on your tyres, if the rain stops then, you're fine. But if the rain's still got another 20 minutes, you want it to probably come in another 5 minutes before that. So you don't want to risk a puncture, but you have to. It's completely calculated, and when the rain starts, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're speaking purely in hypotheticals here, as Carmentelis nearly got past Justas into turn 1, but actually Justas runs wide going through 3 and 4, but he does pick up a nice line and drags himself away from the Aston Martin with a swerve ERS there. But yeah, we are speaking in hypotheticals, but of course we don't know what the weather's going to do, so we don't know how long these Inters are going to last or how long they're going to run for. Montana is on the oldest tyres right now on track, because he pitted a lap early and just I jump away from that battle. Calvin and Passe switch places on the exit of turn 6, so Calvin through on Passe, and Calvin really not enjoying the wet. He hasn't all evening. But out front, checking back in with Waluigi, he set a fast lap the race recently, a couple of laps ago. He's now 3.2 seconds clear of Nolan, who is 4 seconds clear of Luke himself. The front two are on another plane of existence, at least compared to the rest of this field today, because Luke's not exactly holding Farrell Fury up, is he? Farrell Fury's not hounding the back of him. Same goes for Marty. If Marty had that much of a pace advantage, he would be all over Farrell Fury like a rash, but it's just not the case. We're just seeing a really nice spread of, this is the pace of the cars. I don't think too many people are out of place in this race right now, with the conditions being where they are. Another fastest lap for Waluigi, a 46.8, continuing to stretch his legs out front. He's well into turn 1 by the time Luke comes anywhere near the start-finish line. Dylan was holding up a bit of a train with Campbell. He seemed to have pulled that out a bit more now. It's 1.2 seconds to the Williams, and then 1.2 again to Montana. Montana being hounded by Rick a lot right now. Montana's dragged himself back up into 10th, but he's not in any way, shape or form comfortable, because Rick could be making a move here, and Rick is the person on track who looks in best place to make an overtake, and it's on Montana.
Yeah, that's a weird sentence to say. But yeah, he just fell a bit further back, coming out of turn 4, didn't really get the traction he wanted right up behind the Haas. As Car Mentalist, has he finally made his move on Justice? Yes, he has. So he's finally through on the Williams. It's taken him over 10 laps. Actually, I really don't know how long he's been stuck behind. Definitely since the safety car, but he's finally got through, and this is his chance really to get away. He's 5 seconds off the back of Verstappen in the Haas, so he could maybe get up to the back of it, depending on how confident he is in these conditions. But he finally got through and just down at turn 6. But actually, fair play to Justas. He is staying with him through the rest of this lap. He might have a look down the straight, but I think he's going to be a bit too far back. So I'm into this up to P13 as Justas picks up another time penalty. He's up to 6 seconds now.
It's funny how the time penalties always fall the same way. Once one driver picks up a penalty, they tend to pick up another one, whereas everyone else will just go the whole race without picking up any at all. The penalties seem to fall to drivers who already have them once they start coming in. But yeah, Justas, he must have some kind of little damage or something, because he was staying with the D1 train fairly well. Runs wide at the last corner there and nearly crashes, and in fact he's into the wall. He's lost his front wing, goes flying across the track. How has he escaped a DNF there? Lucky we were on board with that. Justas just got... I wonder if that was just a screw it moment, and he just went full beans through the last corner. Lost his front wing. No VSC or anything on the back of that. Marty's ahead of Farrell Fury though. Up ahead, turn 6. They're side by side towards 7. Farrell Fury's going to use everything. He's got the inside line. How well can Marty hang on to this? He's got the inside line for 8. And the Mercedes is through. And Farrell Fury's defence breaks once again. But it lasted for a very long time. Marty's through. He's going to chase off after Luke now, who is 2.3 seconds up the road. Nicely done from Marty to get that move done into turn 6, but what a strange incident that was for Justas. I'm not sure if you were on board with it or you saw what happened, but he just went straight over the Astro on the exit of turn 16 on the last corner. I went ploughed straight into the wall. Very lucky that he didn't DNF.
Yeah, it just seemed like he hit a bump on the exit of the corner. No, obviously, that's going to make you lose control of your car. I just don't see the need for him to be out there. I guess he's doing the most esport thing ever of staying off the track to avoid a penalty. But when you've got 6 seconds, I don't see what's the point of doing that. So, yeah, there was really no need for him to be out there, and he goes slamming into the wall because he's lost control of the car. It's a weird one. But Marty is starting to catch up to the back of Luke now. He's closing that gap, and actually he's pulled a second on Farrell Fury already. So that McLaren just clearly isn't working in the wet conditions. You can't even compare Farrell Fury really to his teammate because Passe's recovering from the first lap. But it's either he doesn't have the confidence or the car just isn't working very well in the wet conditions, and I'd say it's a mixture of the two, as the rain seems to have considerably lightened up, or either that or I'm imagining things.
No, I think you're right. I think we're heading for dry tyres. Justas retires in the pit lane, unsurprisingly, off that horror show of a lap, and he leaves the session immediately. But we're into the dry conditions, and now it's a case of how early do you want to pit? Is it worth someone like Calvin, like Passe, who's just not fallen the right way for them this evening, to try and go a lap early and see if they can make some kind of gains? Because they're currently half a minute off the lead. Rickerick gets a penalty. He joins Montana. We've got yellow flag there just for the clearance of Justas's stricken Williams. But yeah, DRS is enabled, so it's actually not just dried up, stopped raining, it is dried up completely in the space of one lap. We're going to see everybody and their mother come into the pits at the end of this lap because we're into the dry, and it's very unfortunate if you're in Dylan's position, first person who's behind his teammate on track. Nolan's struggling away. Actually, Waluigi's staying out. Nolan's coming in. Waluigi stays out, so Nolan's going for the undercut again. Let's have a look. Luke's coming in. Marty's crashed. Marty's crashed again. He's had another moment on turn 14. He doesn't retire, but everyone's coming in. Luke's in, Farrell Fury's in, Rocco's in, Old School's in, Dylan is in, but he'll have to queue. Campbell's in, Montana's in, Verstappen is in, but he'll have to queue. Rick's in, goes wide, takes the Hamilton line through the pit lane entry. Marty's in with that need of a new front wing. Car Mentalist is in Brent's in, Passey's in, Calvin's in, everyone's in, apart from Waluigi. Actually, Verstappen did stay out because he didn't want to queue, but he's going to lose so much. He's going to lose more on this lap than he would have done if he queued. Have a look at the tyres. Nolan's on hards. He's confident he can get to the end. He will get to the end of the race on hards. Everyone else has gone mediums. Brent is on softs. He's going to go for a 3-stop, I should assume, there. But we've got Luke, Foul Fury, Rocco, Old School, Campbell, Montana, Dylan, Rick, Carmentalist, Marty, and Passey and Calvin all on mediums. We've got a yellow flag. I think that's Brent has had a moment coming out of the pits, and indeed he has. He's come all the way to the left-hand side of the track. So those soft tyres already cost him there. But let's have a look. Waluigi's lead over Nolan is 27.8 seconds. Nolan's going to need to bring that down double time if he wants to get close to the Ferrari. It's 27.7, 27.6. It's going to come down corner by corner, but I don't think it's coming down enough. And Nolan's not careful here. Luke is going to be right on the back of him. And we've got a yellow flag in the middle sector. That is Old School who's round.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at the start of the lap, it still actually looked like conditions. Going through that first sector of the Waluigi, it didn't look that bad to stay out for an extra lap. But towards the end of the lap, he's just bleeding. He's lost about a second in the final sector to Nolan. So into the pits now. He should still come out in the lead, but it's going to be close. I can't remember what the gap was, 2-3 seconds before the pit stops. So this is going to be interesting. He goes on to medium compound tyres. No issues with the pit stop, straight in, straight out. It's going to be Nolan has any chance? No, he's ready. He's gone on hards actually, Nolan as well. So Waluigi out of the pits already, and he is probably about 3 seconds ahead. Yeah, 3 seconds ahead in the lead of this race on a softer compound of tyres as well.
Yeah, I think Luke is going to make short work of Nolan when he comes across him, because he will come across him. Those hards are not going to be nice for a good few laps compared to the mediums at least. I did worry for Verstappen where he was going to come out, but he's only come out in P11. Not too bad. Dylan didn't lose out a huge amount either. He's lost, I think, 1 place to Old School, and 2 to Montana. Montana's now into 7th place in the Haas. Shout out to the Swiss man. Not that he needs one. Because we're used to these kind of performances from him, but he's in 7th place right now after that disconnection and the poor qualifying as well. Let's have a look at what his gains were. He's up 4 places, Montana, from 11th on the grid, so he's had to do that double time. Campbell is in 6th. Campbell has really profited from this situation. He's our real big gainer. Him and Montana, I'd say, the ones who have gained the most through the weather conditions. But let's put it back on the tyres. There we go. So yeah, Nolan, I said he wasn't going to stay ahead of Luke. Luke's taken nearly a second out from this lap. Gap is 6 tenths per second, and I think Luke is going to get some lovely, juicy DRS. And how nice is it to say we've got DRS enabled? Nolan's going to be a bit of a sitting duck for, well, probably next lap, because those hards you can see are not nice. And he's having a big moment out of the hairpin there, and I think Luke might get this done into turn 1. And Marty and Verstappen are going at it, further back. And Marty takes the place from Verstappen. Dylan and Rick, very close company as well. Same goes for Old School and Montana. So Montana made big gains through the stop, but now he's going to struggle, I think, to keep some of his quicker cars behind him. Nolan and Luke are trading places. They're side by side through 2 into 3 as they drop down the hill. Luke's got the inside line. He's going to get quicker line through the inside there. Nolan nearly T-bones him, getting a bit of a tank slapper on. Luke is through into 2nd place. Marty's fastest lap. Dylan and Rick are going at it, and in fact, Montana and Old School tag each other. Old School passes Montana, but he tipped the side of the Haas there, and further back, Rick has dropped it as well, and Rocco is through on Farrell Fury, all happening on lap 30, and I've only just noticed, but we're past half distance.
Yeah, I think Rick and Dylan made a little bit of contact. Rick was on the inside. It's still a bit, that corner's sketchy in the dry, and we're still transitioning out of the wet conditions, so probably just one of them lost the back end slightly and slightly tapped the other one, and Rick's gone round. I was watching Marty for the last lap. He did the fastest lap of the race. He's done fastest sectors again on this lap, so that shows the pace he has. He just couldn't quite get to grips with the traction in the wet,
Oh,
But
old school.
this is proof that he had pace for the pole position pace. As old school has gone off for the exit of turn 13. But yeah, Marty showing he has the pace, but he's just made a few too many mistakes, and it's cost him big time. He's down in 9th now. He came out of the pits in 12th, so recovery to make.
A big recovery to make. It's not been a good lap for old school, has it? He's got damage now. He's got damage. He's got no front wing. Picks up a penalty, spins Montana around, crashes, and then picks up a penalty. Not a good lap for old school, who's having to make an extra stop. Ronderville throw on some softs and see if he can try and get to the end on those, although I wouldn't recommend it. 5-second penalty for speeding. Is he going to retire? He shouldn't do, because there's points on for the next 25 laps of this race, of course. And in fact, let's have a look at this. We've got Dylan and Montana going at it towards turn 6, two D1 rivals. Being kind to Dylan to call him a rival of Montana, but there we go, into turn 6. He gets that hooked up nicely, gets a straight attraction, and he's able to cover off the Swiss man's counter-attack nicely. Dylan through into 7th. Both Alfa Romeos going really well this evening, 4th and 7th. They've made some good gains. Dylan's back up to where he started after a difficult first few laps. Got a yellow flag. I think that's just for Ibo getting out of the way there. And Rocco is up 6 from P10. So both Alfa Romeos have had a good race. In the case of Dylan, quite a good recovery as well, especially from that pit stop where he had to queue. But he has now got Montana and Marty behind him. Montana's not been dropped out of DRS, so he could come back. They've got the same power unit in that car, of course. Marty behind them has got a much better power unit, and I think Marty could find himself very close to Dylan at the end of the straight, even from 8/10 back. Because look at Montana, is he going to go for it on Dylan? And Marty nearly sails into the back of Montana. Such was his fascination. In fact, Dylan has been turned round by Montana into the wall. Montana really was not happy with that overtaking to turn 6, because he's just spun Dylan round. Dylan said what a good race he was having. He's come straight into the pits with his damage. And look at Marty now into turn 1 on Montana, and Marty's up into 7th place. But here comes Montana back towards turn 2. Has he got enough speed in his raw ability, because he's got no speed in the car, to try and come back? I don't think so. Marty's into 7th.
Marty's made his pace is ridiculous right now. He is the fastest driver on track. He's 17 seconds off the lead. And it could have been a lot more as he does another fastest first sector. He's actually only 12 seconds off the podium. It is not out of the question that Marty comes back and gets that podium. There are still 24 laps to go, and maybe the mediums probably can go to the end from here. So it's all down to him. He has got the pace, but I didn't think after that spin just before they went into dries that he'd be in any contention at the end of this race. But he's still there. He's still got a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you factor in the fact that he had to change his front wing coming into the pits, that's 5 seconds he could have found quite easily. As Farrell Fury and Rocco are going side by side on the exit of turn 14. Rocco just about holds on. He was nearly a second ahead of Farrell Fury. Farrell Fury's come right back into it. Rocco riding that bumpy sausage curb. And in fact, Farrell Fury just drives straight into the back of him. And I wonder if that's given the McLaren some damage there, because he just drove into the left rear corner of Rocco's Alfa Romeo, and I think he has got some damage, because Rocco's coming straight back at him towards turn 3 as they drop down the hill. Farrell Fury's got the inside line, but Rocco, I think, will be able to get a straighter exit. He'll tuck underneath, try and get a little bit of the slipstream towards 6. Actually, he doesn't. He pulls out and he lets Farrell Fury go, and he's gonna have a look around the outside. Be interesting to see actually if Farrell Fury does have damage, because he did give a fair whack to Rocco. There was some overspeed as he was going down that straight, but Farrell Fury for now is back into 4th place, and Rocco, the D1 drivers who made gains like Rocco, like Campbell, like Dylan and Montana, who had gained a lot, are just slipping back a little bit now. And you said Marty was catching Waluigi. He's taken a second out of him since you said that. It's now 16.6.
Yeah, a second a lap could easily win him this race, as he does yet another purple middle sector. He's right on the back of Campbell already. He's already in DRS of the Williams car, and I don't think he'll sit around for too long. He's not going to get him down this long 1.2 kilometre back straight, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's close enough into turn 1. he's really making these gains. Farrah Fury, I'm not sure about the damage. He seems to be holding his own. I don't know what.
Nolan. Oh, no, I thought that was Nolan had crashed at turn 1 then. I thought Nolan had crashed at turn 1, but it was just old school. Crisis averted.
Yeah, as Martin now has DRS down the pit straight, does another fastest lap of this race, so that's just the track improvement, but he is on a mission as he gets back up into 6th position now, ahead of Campbell. That Williams, he's just got nothing to fight with in that Williams, and Mercedes driver straight round outside of turn 1, back up to P6.
Marty is the man on the mission, and 15.9 now off the lead, and further back we've got a nice little battle brewing, I think, between Passe and Calvin, and indeed we have, going toe-to-toe through turn 3 and 4. The track just rolls away from him, straightens up a little bit. Calvin gets ahead, but Passe straight on the overtake, and he darts to the outside of the track. Calvin cuts the inside of turn 5. That is the pettiest penalty I've ever seen a driver get there. And Passe is going to get a nice straighter exit. He's able to carry more speed around the apex of turn 6. He's got the inside line for 7 now. Calvin has to surrender the place. Passe is up into 12th, and Calvin has yet another penalty. That's his 5th of the day. And I have to say, Calvin, mate, I did do a double take when you said Calvin would have a good race today. You have successfully cursed him. Congratulations. But Calvin in 13th with 5 penalties. He's going to get Passe back now because he's got another dose of DRS to strike his revenge. But it's utterly meaningless because he may as well be a 5th of a lap down the road with all the penalties he has. Said that last one was absolutely absurd that you've managed to cut turn 5. Another fastest lap for Passe, a 35.540. Calvin does get the move done on Passe, but we'll stay with this because Passe could yet come back into turn 1. That's the beauty of having 2 DRS zones in such close company that as soon as you take a place, you're very likely to lose it again. And here goes Passe. Calvin's derating down the straight, and Passe is going to get this done nicely into turn 1. He's straight back up there, but Calvin has got the inside line as the track winds its way in, the radius tightens for turn 2, drop down for 3. He'll try and cut back underneath, get a smoother exit towards the run through the kink of 5 and down to 6, but he just has a snap of oversteer there, has to correct, and that gives Passe, keeps Passe ahead for now. But I think these guys are going to keep trading places for the next few laps because they seem inseparable in pace. And the DRS zones are working wonders for both of them, both Mercedes power units. Of course, on Marty Watch, 15.3. He's gained another 6/10 as we last checked in, but his progress has stalled a little bit in terms of trying to catch New Waluigi.
Yeah, it's just he's slowly getting his way up to the back of Rocco, but Rocco's going to be a bit more difficult to overtake. He's in and out of the DRS as old school pops in the fastest lap of this race. On the soft compound tyres, those are definitely not going to last, but I think he's just going around at the back, trying to do the fastest lap now. Calvin and Passe, they just swap positions every half lap at this point. They have been for, I think, about 5-6 laps now. But actually, Calvin isn't close enough this time around. Yeah, he's got Ibo just in front of him. Might have just snuck the DRS off him, I'm not sure. I don't even know if that happens anymore. Get DRS off lap cars. But Passe stays ahead of Calvin. Further up, we have Verstappen on the back of his teammate. Montana, the Hasses just aren't going anywhere, as you would expect, anywhere other than backwards. As Commentalist is slowly getting towards the back of them. And Marty actually not even closing up on Rocco anymore, so the gap is really stabilising.
Yeah, Marty's progress has really stalled out in P6, but he has got out of Campbell's penalty window, so his 3-second penalty won't do. He's got 6 seconds of penalties, excuse me, so he's not out of Campbell's penalty window. He's out of Montana's, though. Having made that move, the Haas is, as you say, in very close company now, and they are the closest battle on track, along with Passe and Calvin and Rocco and Farrell Fury. And Rocco, he doesn't have... Well, he's going to run out of airs completely. He's on 0%. It's Rocco as he comes down the back straight. Farrell Fury's on 19, and this is the thing with the dry. The ERS management does come into effect now. It can be abused as much as you like in the wet, but in the dry, you've got to make sure you keep it at a manageable level, and everyone is really struggling with it now. Rocco gets a 3-second time penalty. That'll be joy to Marty's eyes, who does have more penalties, but he is 2.5 seconds behind. So there is a chance, there's a whiff of a chance now for Marty to gain another place on the back of that. Campbell now 5 seconds off Marty, and very much in no man's land. Having a very lonely race right now is Campbell. But the battle, where it's at, is Montana versus Verstappen, and Montana really has no DRS, no ERS to draw upon. And we've got a crash up front. Is that old school yet again? A crash up front. It's a crash down the back. Yet again, old school having a big moment through turn 8, and he's going to need probably another set of tyres after that one.
Yeah, Martin must have heard us on the last time around, because he has just gained a second on the leader. It's now down to 14.4 seconds, and he's starting to gain back up to towards Rocco and the McLaren Ferrell Fury. I can say that McLaren is very, very low to the floor, sparking everywhere. Well, in the braking zones, especially going into turn 11, there was a lot there. As Rocco using all of his ERS, all 4% of it, down the straight. Actually, he didn't even have DRS this time around, so he's going to fall a lot further back. And there is Marty, 1.4 behind now from this battle. So Marty, you think one more lap, he's going to get under the back of this, as Verstappen has got past his teammate and also has retired in the pit lane. But the Hasses have finally swapped positions. Verstappen ahead of his teammate and up into 8th position.
That's a surprise that we're seeing Verstappen quicker than Montana, because Montana, you got to remember, he is Montana, and he's a very quick lad. And I'm surprised that Montana was struggling that much with regards to his teammate to keep him behind. But we'll see if Verstappen is able to get away from Montana now. The gap's still only 4 tenths per second. See how that evolves over the lap. Old School becomes our 4th DNF of the day. Having a look, where's Ibo? Ibo must be 3 laps off the lead now, because he's 2 minutes 20 behind Brent, who's the car ahead of him, which is quite the margin. And I just jumped aboard with car mentalist there, also having quite a lonely race right now behind the two Hasses, and he had a big moment out of turn 6, and still drivers are struggling a little bit, getting used to these cars still a lot of moments on traction. And of course, at this point in the race, we're well past what would be a normal 50% race now. Concentration and fatigue are going to be factors that, the drivers have got to try and manage their concentration levels, keep their focus up, because there's going to be mistakes coming in the last few laps of the race where, your mind just starts to wander a little bit. You start thinking about bed or shopping or work or school the next day, and you start just thinking about other things than driving the car because you're so tired, because you've done so many laps. You got to keep focused. And we said about Marty catching Rocco. He's not lost any focus, because he's 3 tenths per second behind Alfa Romeo. He's got DRS, and Rocco's got DRS as well, but such is the overspeed of the Mercedes. He's gaining nicely down the pit straight without having to use any ERS, even though Rocco had DRS to defend. That's how the big differential between these cars in straight line speed. So this is the battle on track right now. It's Ferrell Fury, Rocco's close back up to the Irishman, and Marty the Bulgarian as well. So that and the two Hasses remain our only real battles on track. No one else is within a whiff of DRS.
Yeah, I'm very surprised Marty didn't go for it there. He's got 60% of his ERS still. Rocco basically running on nothing. And you saw how much speed he had without the ERS. He gets on the curb, loses the back end, just manages to save that. But he's lost a bit of time from that. He's close to picking up another penalty, I think, as well. But he has so much speed in a straight line. He just needs to use it as Rocco clips the yellow curb on the inside of turn 11. This brings them closer again. Martin might have a chance down the back straight to get this move done. He needs to get these moves done as quickly as possible because of the 6 seconds of penalty. He's clear of Campbell now, but if he wants to hold the positions he's about to gain of Rocco, and maybe Ferrell Fury, if he can get him down the next straight, he's up to 5th provisionally without the penalties. Very nice overtaking indeed. Rocco was kind of a sitting duck down the straights anyway, as now we have the interesting one. Ferrell Fury holding everyone up in the dry. Can he do it against Marty? Oh no, holding everyone up in the wet. Sorry. Can he do it against Marty in the dry? Both similar in a straight line, but in the corners, that Mercedes is just a lot faster.
I think Farrell Fury having a lot more difficulty trying to keep Marty behind with DRS. In fact, Marty having another big moment out of 4 there. We're seeing so many unforced errors from Aita. You have to think he could have walked this race on another day, but just so many little unforced errors that he made. Like that moment on the last lap as well. I mean, he's going to get past Farrell Fury, and he'll probably end up getting his penalty window on Rocco. He's certainly out of Campbell's penalty window now. And when you first mentioned him saying he could catch Waluigi, he was 17 seconds off the lead. That's now 12.3. So Marty is making the kind of gains we expected him to in the dry. But you have to think this is certainly a race of what could have been for Marty. He's making a sterling recovery, but he's very much what could have been. He could have been leading this race. He could have been walking this race on another day. And from that first lap where he lost 3 or 4 places, it just unravelled slightly for him. And he's made a lot of little mistakes that have ended up costing him when you add them all together. Here he comes to Farrell Fury now on the inside of 14. Farrell Fury is not going to fight that one back at all. And he's through nicely, 11.1 off the lead now. DRS taking big effect, and he's now got his sights set on Nolan on those hard tyres, and that decision for Nolan just hasn't worked out. He's the only man on track now who is not on the mediums, and he's going to really struggle to keep Marty behind, but Farrell Fury and Rocco as well may end up still coming towards Nolan, so we'll see how that evolves. But yeah, Marty he's having a good race, but could have been so much more for him.
I mean, yeah, he took pole position. He's still down 3 places at the end of the day. When he's got in it all right, he's been the fastest driver on track, and at times it's not even been close. But the amount of mistakes that have just crept in, corner exits, hitting the wall, the going off track under the safety car, picking up the penalties, it's just so many unforced errors, as you say, that if he'd just removed, he could have been 5-10 seconds out in front, especially because he's in the Mercedes as well. He is starting to close that gap to Nolan. Not going to have DRS system around. Still got the McLaren behind him in the DRS zone. But Nolan on those hards, he was the first one to switch, so maybe he thought the tyres wouldn't go all the way. Maybe they won't go all the way. We don't quite know that yet. But he's still going. The pace, he's not fallen off as much as you might have thought on those hard compound tyres, but I think he's going to get swamped next time around by this Mercedes behind him.
I should think the medium rounds will go to the end. If they're not, then the pit stop would be around a couple of laps' time, because that'll be the midway between the transition point and the end of the race. So if there's any pit stops coming, they should be around then. But I don't think we'll see any. I think it's just a case of Nolan's going to have to tough this out. Because the trouble for him is Marty is dragging Farrell Fury with him, because Farrell Fury is still hanging on to Marty's DRS. So it could be a 1-2 double knockout for Nolan soon, with Marty and Farrell Fury behind. He's drove a sterling race though, Nolan. He's kept his head above water. He's driven very cleanly. The switch to hards didn't really pay off for him, but I mean, as you say, he was the first one to pit. He wasn't to know what everyone else was going to do. And another penalty for Calvin. He's up into 18 seconds now. Not too far away from disqualification, I should imagine. He's down in 13th place. Only Dylan, Brent and Ibo behind him. Dylan's going to make... Dylan's 11 seconds behind Calvin, and currently is a net 7 seconds ahead of him, which I think speaks volumes about the state of Calvin's race right now. But let's have a look. Marty, very close to Nolan now. And he's going to get this move done very easily if he doesn't have little moments like that where he's spinning, nearly going into a half spin through the middle of turn 13. Here we go now, into the DRS zone. He's got pops the rear wing open. Nolan's not even going to bother defending because he knows Marty's quicker. He's on quicker tyres, he's in a quicker car, and he's got that DRS open. He's safely through into 3rd place. Luke is his next target up the road, and again, a moment for Marty out of 14. He's not enjoying putting the power down out of that corner, because he's done it so often today where he's just making mistakes there. And I'm going to be very open and say I worry for the last 14 laps of this race, because that could well be our last overtake. I don't want to be a pessimist, but that could be our last overtake. We've got Rickerick and Car Mentalists we might get another one there. If Montana can maybe get back at Verstappen, but neither have any ERS, and they're both terrible in the straight line. I think we're not going to see too much more on-track action, because I don't think Nolan is going to hang on to the back of Marty. But he's keeping Farrell Fury behind for now. Farrell Fury's not followed Marty into Nolan's DRS like I thought he would. 1.5 seconds is the gap, and the longer this goes on, the more the track conditions and the tyres are going to favour Nolan's hards over Farrell Fury's mediums. So, you know what? We may not see all that much action for the rest of this race. Waluigi has a 6-second lead. It's been pretty much that for the last 10 laps. Marty will catch up to Luke, we should hope, because he's now less than 10 seconds off the lead. He's nearly halved the lead since you mentioned about him making that progress when it was about 17, 18 seconds. So Marty's still on the charge. He's still on course to win this race on track, but he's not going to win it on penalties unless Waluigi has an absolute howler over the last 10 laps.
Yeah, he's gained about 7 or 8 seconds in about 11 laps, which is decent progress. He's got 12 laps to go, so he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna win this race unless he finds another half second of that, and keeps it on the track at the same time. But he's done a very good job to get back through the field. He could well. I should think he'll find the time to pull this gap out to Nolan and stay on the podium at least, which is a good recovery after having no front wing and being down in 12th place at the crossover point to Dries. So he's the fastest driver on track, and he just keeps making these small little errors on traction, whether it's turning the ERS on slightly too early and spinning at the rears, or it's just spinning at the rears on its own. It's just small details that, without those errors, he walks away with this race. And we're not talking about the errors. We're talking about how great his driving has been. Which, without the errors, his driving has been fantastic. As you can see now, he's 2 seconds ahead of Nolan already. 2.7 off the back of Luke. He is going to get on the back of the AlphaTauri and have a chance to at least finish P2 on the road here. And actually, he's only 8.5 off the lead. So we have that is an Aston Martin. In
that is
second.
Calvin. Oh dear, Ariel Calvin. It's not going for you, mate, is it? It's really not going for you. What are we on? We're on 18 seconds of penalties, a couple of spins. He was up in 7th place. It was looking rosy at one point early on today, but he's just fell down since then, and now Dylan is going to make short work of this Aston Martin. I think even with that Ferrari engine in the back, because Calvin is going to have really hot tyres that he's going to struggle to get down out of turn 13, and you can see he nearly loses the car there. Dylan's going to be ahead before we get anywhere near the DRS zone, and Dylan, very unfortunate when he was spun around by Montana. He could have had a much better race today, but he's in 13th. He's nearly a minute off the lead, but he's through and he's up in 13th, and every position, every point counts in Eloy and Jaw. And speaking of positions, we've got Marty now 2 seconds behind Luke, exactly, or it was more or less exactly 2 seconds, and he's 8.4 now behind Waluigi, so another 1.5 seconds out of him since he's cleared Nolan. So his progress has not slowed down at all, has it, Marty? He's really, really on a charge, and he's still, I think, on course to get to Waluigi around the last lap of this race to win it on track.
Yeah, definitely. He is the fastest driver on track. He showed that in qualifying. He didn't go and do a second running, the final run in qualifying. No, Waluigi did validate the lap time and was still only within a tenth of him. Before that, both their second runs, he was half a second quicker. So he has got that much of an advantage if he can just avoid the mistakes. But I would say the most important thing for all the drivers in here, but especially Marty, he's made all these mistakes. He's still in the race, which is the most important thing. Pick up a point for every lap. That's 45 points so far. Finished this one 46. He's still in this race with a chance to finish with a very good chance to still finish on the podium, which is at least 46 points. So he's getting over 90 points if he finishes this race.
Yeah,
which,
and it
considering he could have been out of it 10 laps ago, 20 laps ago, is remarkable, to be honest.
I agree, and it keeps him on the coattails of some kind of championship fight. I mean, he picked up 64 points from Bahrain. He didn't have the best race. He finished in P14 there when he was leading the race at one point in a similarly dominant fashion, at least pace-wise, to what he is right now. And Calvin and Dylan are going at it again into turn one. This is the real battle on track, the one we care about. The battle for P13, unlucky for some. Calvin is back ahead of Dylan. He's 0.3 per second. Dylan's going to try and fight this one back, I think, down the DRS straight. Up ahead, Marty is now in DRS range of Luke. I don't know if he's got DRS on this lap, if he was through in the detection point. He is in DRS. You're absolutely right, RJ. So I think we'll see a move here for second place in the next lap. And I'll tell you what, I think Marty can get second place on penalties. With his current pace, I think he will. Because if he catches up to Waluigi, and Waluigi is 6 seconds ahead of Luke, Marty's got 6 seconds of penalties. He should get second place. A third penalty notwithstanding. So got the penalties on the screen right now. He's the only man with 2 apart from Brent. Everyone else is on 1, and then there's Calvin on 6. Ibo on God knows how many. He has 90 seconds, and Marty's dropped it. Oh dear, Marty. Should we have expected anything less from this race today? Nolan back onto the podium. Farrell Fury's through to 4th. And one's going to have to do it all over again. And, well, he's going to keep 5th place net because Rocco is still more than 3 seconds behind. But Marty. I can't say I'm not surprised, to be honest with you. Luke is back in 2nd, Nolan's back in 3rd.
You'd think at some point you'd stop doing it. But, I mean, when you're pushing that hard, you kind of just forget about what you're kind of doing. You do it on instinct, and sometimes the instinct is not helping you all the time as Marty spins there, and he's still going to finish this race, but you've got the 6 seconds penalty. You've got to push, but you've got to be realistic. You can open that gap if you just do the lap time you are doing. Don't need to risk to go any faster. You're not gonna get ahead of Waluigi and then pull out 6 seconds on him. It's not realistic. So you've got to beat what's in front of you. Luke's in front of him. You got past him. You've got to pull the 6 seconds to him. You can't.
Oh, sorry. Montana and Rickerick had a big moment down the straight towards 14. Montana just about stays ahead of Rick, but that was a mad moment there between the D1 champ and the former D1 runner-up, Rickerick. I have no idea what happened there, but one of them just swung to the far right of the track, and it looked like that was very nearly an airplane crash between them, but that's a really close battle on track now. But yeah, as you were saying on Marty, he didn't need to push. He could have kept going the pace he was at, and he would have comfortably got second in this race over Luke, because Luke was slower than Waluigi anyway, and he was going to catch Waluigi by the end. So Marty just didn't need to exert himself like he did, and instead he's ended up finding himself in 5th place. He might yet overtake Farrell Fury again, and Nolan again. He might yet pull 6 seconds on those, but this whole race has been damage limitation when it should have been a win. I mean, it's a no-brainer. What Marty should have won this race, but individual errors, which is what you'd expect from D4, D5 drivers. I mean, no disrespect to any of them, but it is, that's the level it's at, that you expect more mistakes from D4 and D5 drivers, and it's going to be very costly, and it's going to cost him today.
Yeah, I completely agree on that point. The pace of D4 and D5 drivers, the pace is never a question. The pace is always fairly consistent. They're guys that can push up to the probably midfield of D2 if they were just consistent. And the big thing with consistency is avoiding these errors that Marty has shown today with losing the traction so many times. Is it's part of what makes some of the drivers, like Montana, for example, he's at the top because he hardly ever puts a foot wrong.
Unless it's Bahrain. Unless it's Bahrain D1, in which case he crashes under safety cars.
But you remember the moments when it does happen, because it is so far and few and far between, and he has also the pace to back it up, but that consistency is the key foundation of that, and Marty will learn from this. He will improve from this. He clearly has the pace, but it's just keeping it together most of the time.
Yeah, that's where endurance racing, at least in the league racing, will expose you, because you've got to do it over 56 laps, not 28. You've got to keep it clean 56 laps, not 28. You've got to keep the pace up 56 laps, not 28. It's more demanding on every aspect of your ability than a normal league race. As we're looking back from Rickerick to Montana here, who is trying to get 9th place back. We've got Marty and Farrell Fury. Marty is through on Farrell Fury yet again for what feels like the 50th time today. Marty and Farrell Fury are battling away, but Marty's through. He's up into 4th, and he's now got 7 laps rather to pull 6 seconds on the McLaren, and he's done it with the fastest lap of the race. Rickerick and Verstappen trade places into 14. Rickerick is through after having looked like he could have been overtaken by Montana. He's now through on Verstappen, up into 8th place. The Hasses are trundling along nicely, but they're very vulnerable now to Car Mentalist, who's he's been dragged along here, and he's now tucked into Montana's DRS. We're going to see a Montana versus Car Mentalist battle here, possibly Verstappen as well. So there are battles still to be had out on track, as Marty, I think, is going to be the next one to make a move, and he's going to make a move on Nolan, I should think, by the end of this lap. He's got, I said, 6.5 laps to find 6 seconds. Is he going to do it, do you think, RJ?
It's going to be very close. Those hards are probably not as bad as they would have been 5-10 laps ago compared to the mediums. Mediums should, they'll be fine, but not at the peak of their powers. Definitely, the hards should be in better condition. They're still not a good tyre to be on. I still wouldn't want to be on them. I'd still rather be on the mediums, but the gap between them isn't going to be that much, as Marty should get this overtake done easily. Whether he can pull out the 6 seconds, I think it's going to be very difficult. He'd have to do a second a lap, which he could do, but now he genuinely does have to push if he wants to do that. So it'll be very touch and go on a lap, but I think third is definitely the limit of where he can get to.
Yeah, he's not going to make 5 seconds on Luke, unless Luke makes some kind of mistake. And we saw from Bahrain, he doesn't do that. He won over 57 laps because Farrell Fury and because Marty made mistakes in the Mercedes when they looked like winning. Luke just shone through by not making those individual errors. So that is why, Marty, I think, as you say, third is the limit. His glass ceiling today. He's got Nolan 0.4 of a second behind Farrell Fury, further 1 second back. 1.5 to Farrell Fury. He needs another 4.5 rather in 5 2/3 of a lap, which you say we're very close. He needs to get out of Nolan's DRS, and he needs Nolan to dump Farrell Fury, because if there's any whiff of a DRS train here, and Farrell Fury can hang on to Nolan, who can hang on to Marty, that's game over for Marty in terms of the podium. He needs to break DRS. He needs to break it quickly to the guys behind. And in fact, I think he's going to drag Nolan with him. It's just a case of is Farrell Fury going to get dragged? Is Farrell Fury's in DRS this lap, so I think that may well be curtains for Marty, because Farrell Fury's going to have a lap where he can just about hang on to the back of Nolan, to the back of Marty, and it's going to keep him close enough. It's going to allow him to close back up by a couple of tenths and deny Marty any hint of progress, because it pulls the gap down to 1.7 seconds. So with 5 laps to go, Marty needs 4.3. It is going to be very, very tight. I think Farrell Fury is out of DRS now. He's out of DRS and he's out of ERS. Marty isn't, which is... I really don't know how this is going to go. I think there is just about time for Marty, but he needs some perfect qualifying laps right now. And looking further back, we've got Montana and Car Mentalist still going at it in this nice little trade, but Rickerick is keeping them all in DRS, which is denying Car Mentalist the chance to use all of his overtake that he has got an advantage over Montana, and his straight line speed in that Mercedes power unit. He's not able to use it to any kind of effect because his teammate and Rickerick are dragging him along.
Yeah, they're all just stuck about the same distance back from each other, not really going anywhere. I have to say, I'd never thought I'd see a Haas pair 9th and 10th. Even though it is Verstappen and Montana, I still never thought I'd see them in the top 10, both of them. And I mean, a Williams in 7th as well. Campbell was we haven't really spoken about Campbell since the rain. He's done a fantastic job to hold on to 7th actually, and still out of DRS range behind him. So he's done a fantastic job. Nolan has stayed with Marty. He's actually a bit closer to him in the DRS as well. He's out of ERS, but he's just staying with him. And Feral Fury, the gap isn't really growing that much. It's about 2.5 seconds nearly, just over 2 seconds. And this is going to be so close to the line whether Marty can actually extend that gap to the 5th place man or not. It's going to be a real struggle for him to actually do them.
Yep, 4 laps, 3.6 seconds is what Marty needs. He's still hovering just under the threshold of needing a second a lap. And right now, as long as he keeps at 9/10 a lap, that is what he needs. He needs 9/10 each lap, every lap between now and the end to get Feral Fury out of his penalty window. The gap is 2.5 right now, teetering around 2.6. Martin needs some big middle sectors here. He needs to maximise where he can make these gains through the corners over Feral Fury. The tyres, practically identical. They don't come into play. It's all about the raw performance of the driver and of the car. You mentioned Campbell is having a lovely race. He's been all by himself pretty much the entire stint we've had on dries, but Rick is now half a second behind him. We've got a yellow flag, actually. Feral Fury is spun, so penalty for Calvin. That's 21 seconds. So Feral Fury spun. That is Marty's job done for him. He's in P3. He's not going to dump Nolan. So he's just got to 4 laps to not make a mistake. How hard can it be, Marty? 1998. Just got to coast to the end now. Rocco's got a penalty and he's far, far behind. Feral Fury's 5 seconds outside of Marty's penalty window now. So Marty's just got to get to the race. He can afford to let Nolan go and let Nolan tow him along. But further back, it is Campbell and Rickerick. Rickerick staying very close, half a second through turn 13, to bank turn 13. He's got some errs to play with. Campbell has even less, and here we go. I think Rickerick is going to find this a very easy overtake. It's been a staunch defence of 7th place for Campbell, out there alone for so long. But Rickerick finally makes his move and is up into 7th, and Campbell now, he's got a problem. Is he going to be able to keep these Hasses behind him? These pesky Hasses, as you say, are far above any place they have any right to be. Driven a fabulous race today by Campbell and Montana. Speaking of Montana, Car Mentalist very close behind him, and Car Mentalist has got some errs to use, so I think that we might see Car Mentalist going for it in the last couple of laps, because he wasn't using down straight. You can see Montana's derating. He's using everything he can to make sure he's in the best position to give himself the best probability of taking that place and of keeping it.
Yeah, and Montana's still just the DRS from his teammate, keeping him ahead of the Aston Martin. Campbell, I still don't understand. He was so high up. He just must have nailed the switch onto dries, because he gained so many. I think he was up in P6 when they pit onto dry tyres. Now in P8, but he's gonna hold off these Hasses. The Hasses are they have nothing in a straight line, even compared to the Williams. They've got nothing. So this shouldn't be the most difficult defence from Campbell, and actually he's still in DRS range of Rick in front, so he's going to give it another crack. Marty has finally dropped Nolan out of DRS range. It's a few laps too late, though. Only 1.8 seconds, so he's going to lose that place. 2 laps remaining, unless Nolan makes a mistake.
Car Mentalist is going for it. Sorry, he's going for it into turn 14. Montana squeezes him up against the inside curb. I think Car Mentalist would have got a corner cut for that. He has to back out, but he's put Montana out of DRS down the main straight. Montana had a better exit, I think. He has got DRS effect on Campbell. It must have been a double detection. But here we go. Car Mentalist is using again to turn 1. Ibbo's Ghost is coming out of the pits, and they're ghosted, but that would have been off-putting for Car Mentalist there. And that was his big attempt, and it hasn't come off. And Verstappen is doing just enough to keep his teammate ahead in 10th place here, because Car Mentalist, he went for a move. He went very late, almost half-hearted, but he threw his car up the inside of Montana there. Montana covered him off. I don't think Montana was expecting it one jot. And, well, Car Mentalist just about came out of that with all four wheels and all of his car intact. But, well, that was nearly another collision there for Montana to be involved in. He's been involved in one with Old School today and another with Dylan. So he's not had the cleanest race as Montana. But, you know, think of it as like Toxic and Nathan in F2, Montana in D1. The best drivers always get their elbows out when they need to. Brent retires in the pits as we now start the last lap of this 56 race Chinese Grand Prix. Not been the most entertaining affair, particularly up front. Waluigi has looked unchallenged all race, you have to say, through wet and dry, through thick and thin. He's done exactly what he needs to, and it hasn't put a foot wrong. Superlative race from the Belgian, from the Flying Waffle, and he's done a great job, and he's out in front by 8.4 seconds from Luke, and he's just eased that gap up all evening long. It's never really looked like coming down. Nolan was threatened once, and Car Mentalist is getting ahead of Montana there. They barge wheels again. They're going to be barge wheels again through the last corner, and Montana was not inclined to leave the car's width that Car Mentalist was entitled to. He covered the apex off. He left space purely because Car Mentalist was there, but not enough. And Montana spins him round and doesn't seem to care too much. Montana's down and out, and Campbell is back ahead of Rick as well. It's all happening here on the last lap. But I don't think Car Mentalist will be happy. Old School's not happy, I can see in the Discord. And I don't think Dylan will be happy either. Montana might be facing some stewards reports for this race as Marty picks up another penalty. But it doesn't matter. He's got the gap to Foul Fury, 13 seconds as it is now. But let's ride on board with the man who has dominated and controlled this race from start to finish. Penalty for Rocco. Campbell's actually within 3/10 now of getting past Rocco for P6. And so there's a chance there for the Williams man. It's 5.9 right now, 5.5. Rocco's made some kind of mistake through the middle sector. But let's look at Waluigi because he hasn't put a foot wrong. He's driven a fantastic race. And he's going to win the second race of LOE Endurance. He wins the Chinese Grand Prix. We've got a yellow flag in the middle sector. I think that's Car Mentalist's round, or is Rickaric's round, sorry. On turn 12, Marty Flatus lap, he finishes third on track. It's Nolan who's going to take the penalty on his hard tyres. But let's have a look at this further back. We've got a little battle brewing, or I thought we did. No, everyone's spread out, and I think Car Mentalist had some kind of mistake on the last lap because he is way off this now after that collision with Montana. And it's going to be Farrell Fury in fifth. Rocco's going to come in sixth. Campbell is going to get him. So Rocco had a tragic final lap penalty, and he made some kind of huge error that brought Campbell in. Campbell takes sixth. Rocco seventh. Verstappen eighth. Montana is ninth. Both are jumped by Passe on penalties in the end. Rickerick is going to come home 11th. Car Mentalist is 12th after looking like he could have gained a couple of places on the two Hasses earlier on. Dylan has had a very sombre and lonely second half of this race after contact earlier on, and he is going to be 13th. And we wait for Calvin just behind him. And a shout out for Calvin, 21 seconds penalties at China. I never thought it was possible, but he's managed it. So the Belgians bracket the field. It's a Belgian first, it's a Belgian last. It's a Belgian sandwich. It's Waluigi who comes out on top in Shanghai. And I'm going to ask you, Game says QVR Campbell, who's your driver of the day? RJ.
This is... Oh, do you know what? I kind of agree with that Campbell show, actually, because I didn't think the Williams would be that far up. To get sixth, I think, in the end, is a really, very, very good race, considering he is in the Williams. So, yeah, I'd probably go Campbell, actually.
I'm more than happy to agree with you. I think Campbell, he didn't do anything wrong, did he? A lot of people made mistakes in that race. Campbell just went about his business, and he did well to get back at Rick at the end, although Rick had some kind of a spin or error, didn't we? And it's raining again behind the screen there. But yeah, Campbell did a great job. 18th to 6th, and all D1 drivers, in fact, made against Rocco up to 7th. Verstappen from 15th to 9th. Montana ended up getting one place, and it was a very eventful race for him. But yeah, Waluigi wins from second. Lucas finishes P2. Nolan P3. Marty, what could have been for him from pole in P4. Foul Fury is 5th. Campbell 6th. Rocco 7th. Passe 8th. Verstappen 9th. Montana is 10th. Rickerick is 11th. Car Mentalist 12th. Dylan 13th. Calvin 14th with as many penalties. And then our DNFers, Brent, Ibo, Old School, Justas, Noah, we won't comment about him, and ERS Major rounds out the grid, or the results, sorry. But Yeah, that was a strange race. It had its lulls, it had its dull moments, but the start and the end, particularly, once that dry stick got going, it had some fantastic wheel-to-wheel action, and I can see there's going to be some spice thrown in LOE General for that because a few of the drivers aren't very happy, and I think particularly they're not happy with Montana. He got his elbows out multiple times that race.
Yeah, it's one of those I prefer not to speak moments really. At the moment, but
You're a
yeah,
commentator.
that
You're allowed to pass judgment.
we'll save it for now. But I mean, yeah, the beginning of the race was very good. There's so much that happened in the first 5 laps. There was so much happened in the last 5 laps, and the middle bit of the race was really just uh, Marty watch really. Um, because if he wasn't making a mistake, it was him getting back through the field. So, uh, yeah, there was a bit of the lull in the middle, but I think that there were still some drivers making their way back through. So overall, a pretty good race. How many safety cars do we have? Just the one? Just
Just the
two?
one. Just the one.
Pretty good. I said two, so even I got that wrong. But yeah, I think that was a pretty good race overall.
I agree. I think in the end I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we did see I think who will turn out to be our two title contenders. Very very premature saying that, but Waluigi and Luke on top. I think that could be a battle that will rumble on all season long because over 56 laps, Luke wasn't that much slower than Waluigi, was he? It was only 8 seconds in 56 laps. That's nothing, or it is in Formula One, but still, I think that could go to and fro. I mean, Luke landed the first punch in Bahrain, second place uh, in China. Not at all a bad start for the Englishman. But yeah, that was a great race. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you anyone who tuned in, and thank you to anyone who will tune in at a later date. It's been a pleasure commentating. I'm sure I'll be back in the car for the next one. I'm sure Ivor and Mike will be back in my place in the commentary box. So can we expect to see you, RJ, around for the next race in France?
I don't know yet. Yeah, I don't know yet.
Hopefully we do. It's been an absolute pleasure commentating with you, my man. And all I can say is I said thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we get more races like we've seen in Bahrain and China, because I think we had two great races to start LOE Endurance. There's a risk with 100% races that you're not going to get too much action, but we've had some fabulous action, and I'm sure the stewards will be very, very busy with that one. But yeah, tune in 3 weeks' time for round 3 at Circuit Paul Ricard at France. But from myself and from RJ, that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in. Farewell.